Power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn podcast feed.
Whew, the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, Dr. Brian Sovryn here to, introduce a debate that I was a part of. This was held originally on April 20th, 2024, so 420, woo! And this was all about AI, modern AI, and is it, I think it was laid out as, so this was done by Sec of the Agora podcast, and as you'll hear, he did a phenomenal job his first time moderating a debate, and this is a very formal debate, and it was an honor to be a part of it. Okay. It was between myself in somewhat of a pro AI position, though, as you'll hear, I'm not exactly pro AI. I'm more in the, what exactly are we talking about here position when, what is the reality of the technology that we're talking about? Precision in language, things like this, people, things that people have known about sovereign tech for an incredibly long period of time. And also, again, Jeremiah Harding was in the camp of, AI is being used by evil people and, the very anti-AI position. There's some nuance here and there, and you'll hear that as we go through it. But this was, the theme anyway, was basically, is AI an existential threat to humanity? Like that's the gist. Okay. Like I said, there's going to be some nuance within this. You are going to get the entirety of the debate here. Again, it was initially part of the Agora podcast, but you'll get that. But as a bonus, now, if you're a Sovereign Tech patron, you're already getting access. You're getting access to this ahead of time, and then it's being available public. So if you're hearing this now, this is it out in the public feed for you. But patrons have already had this for days. And something else that patrons have had is what I am going to append at the end of this episode, or at the end of the debate. I'm going to append a couple of conversations that I've had on weekly Q&As, which are available to Sovereign Tech patrons only. Of course, go to patreon.sovereigntech.com if you want to become that. The Q&As come out every week, and they are a rollicking good time, I assure you that. Certainly the more esoteric and interesting stuff that I've ever done, though there are plenty of tech conversations like the ones getting appended here, getting included in this release. Now, these Q&A conversations, actually, what I'm going to do, calling an audible here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this chronologically, because there was a conversation that I had about AI in the Q&A before we did the actual debate. And so you will hear that first. Then it'll cut into the Agora podcast episode of the debate. And then after the debate, I'll have what I ended up recording pretty much right after the debate was over for a Q&A. And I'm only including the bits of those Q&As as are relevant to the AI conversation. Okay. I will say this at the onset. Both the developments within what gets called AI, and this is a major part of what I'm going to get into in this debate, because you're wondering, like, what is this AI he's talking about? Are you talking about LLMs? Are you talking about computer vision? Is this narrow AI? Are we talking about artificial general intelligence? Something like Skynet? Are we talking about super intelligence? What is this? Yeah, I'm going to kind of break that down within this. But bottom line, the developments within AI that I have to deal with on a daily basis, actually, okay, has been somewhat inspiring in getting me to want to get back to what we could call the classic, or maybe more accurately, the retro sovereign tech model, to where I feel inspired to talk about the tech world again. Because I think that there's a lot of FUD, a lot of let's see, what what analogy should I use? A lot of wolf in sheep's clothing, a lot of wool getting pulled over the eyes, a lot of we could use a ton of analogies here. Bottom line is, there's not a lot of nuance and reality in the tech space right now. It's nuts. And I still listen to tech podcasts, understand. And even some of the best tech podcasts that have been around forever, longer than even Sovryn Tech, which that's saying something because I've been going for almost 12 years now. Okay. Even the best have really floundered, in my opinion, on all of this. They've fallen into a lot of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Okay. And so it's a time where I think Sovryn Tech is actually more needed than it's ever been. Because as compared to when I started Sovryn Tech in 2012, okay, back then, you could really, and you could, I mean, believe me, you still could, even with smartphones, burgeoning at the time, you could still kind of avoid, the tech world. And you really still can get away with, away from it if you want to. I've always said to you that true success is being able to be permanently away from keyboard, right? Permanently AFK. That's real success in our present world. All right. But it's a time where, now, where a lot of times, you go to a restaurant, you got to scan a QR code. I mean, in 2012, that was like one of the major challenges in cryptocurrency, in blockchain, was how the fuck do we get people to use QR codes? These things are weird. Now, oh no, everybody knows what a QR code is, and they've got to deal with it. Unless, again, they've reached that level of success where they don't need to, and then usually it just means they have assistants that do it for them, or they're out in the woods or in a cave, which, certainly appeals to me and working on it. But regardless, right now, I do feel that Sovryn Tech is more necessary, more needed than it's ever been. And so consider this a first entry in a return of these kinds of conversations coming from me, because they need to happen. All right, there's lots of other projects I'm working on right now as well, but this is something that needs to happen, because the reality around this stuff, I mean, my main concern is you'll hear in this debate, and as you'll hear me talk about more within the Q&A content, is that people don't actually know, like, as I'll say in the Q&A, or as I'll say in the debate, okay, and as I've said to you many times over the years, only the paranoid survive. But people don't know what to actually be paranoid about. And so they're wasting their energy, not just their energy, but other people's energy, on worrying about shit that may not, or most likely, or I would argue many times, just doesn't need to be worried about. And you're missing what's actually going on. Now, am I the only person who has the purview on what's actually going on in all this? No, I'm not going to claim that. There are other people who know. But whoa boy, even in circles that some people might find that I am, or might experience me newly to, not that I am new to them, even some very intelligent people that I have a lot of respect for, say even in like the spirituality or, history space and so on, these people are espousing just nonsense when it comes to our present technological future. Okay. I mean, one thing that I didn't get to in the debate and into the Q&A, and I don't think I really touched on in the Q&As. Look, I've been telling you for the past few years, way before some, unnamed virus from unnamed geographies, swept the world. Okay. Way before that, I was telling you, we live in a dystopia. So, people thinking that I'm some kind of like utopianist with AI and all this. No. No, I've been telling you we live in a dystopia much longer than anybody else, certainly in the tech space for sure. Okay. Now, how do you navigate dystopia though? Well, you have to actually know what to avoid. And there are things to use. There are things to avoid. There are cracks to live in, and there are cracks to, ultimately stay away from because the ground is crumbling beneath you. Or there's times to actually stand on the concrete with sure footing. Just know what you're doing and how to use it. Okay? So anyway, all of these crazy analogies aside, I don't want to get in much more here. I want to get right to the content. And again, we're gonna cut right to the Q&A that I recorded, or the AI part of the Q&A that I recorded before this debate. Then we'll cut to the actual debate, okay, from the Agora podcast, which again, it was such a pleasure to be a part of it. Everybody involved was top notch, okay? And then after that, once that's done, you'll get the AI part of my Q&A that I recorded shortly after that debate. And then the episode will end right there. So feel free to let me know what you think about this. Your thoughts on AI, your thoughts on the debate overall, let me know. And of course, if you want to be a patron to get access to this Q&A content all the time, you just head over to patreon.sovryntech.com. So without any further ado, here we go. The Q&A, the pre-show to the debate, and then we'll hit the debate, and then we'll hit the after show of the debate. And I'll see all of you, on the other side. I want to open this up. This is frankly unbelievable. Let me open up the Discord, but... So I actually had a lot of response to the AI update for 2024 that I did of what I titled under the nomenclature of Sovryn Tech R. That wasn't a mistake, okay? It's not like I hit the R key instead of the X key. It's Sovryn Tech R, and the R stands for a few different things, which I won't get into right this second, but that is going to be the more tech show, as in, traditional electronics, consumer technology. Well, even, of course, it's not just consumer technology, but the more traditional tech show that you're used to from me. So there will be more of those, and I'm actually tempted. I'm not sure how I want to work this out, because I'm actually tempted to do a response episode for Sovryn Tech R entirely about AI, because I got so much response from that episode around AI. Not only that, but if you're in the Discord, you already know about this, so Sovryn Tech patrons aren't unaware, but Sec reached out to me and said, hey, for the Agora podcast, do you want to have a debate with this guy, Jeremiah Harding? Now, I'm going to be forthright with everybody here. I had no idea who the hell Jeremiah Harding is. I'm not saying that as any kind of insult or to be crass. I'm just saying I had no idea. Not somebody that crossed my radar. Apparently does his, or not apparently, I know he does his own podcast. It looks like it's been a while, of quite a few months since he's done an episode. But anyway, so I'm going to be debating. We're going to have, it's scheduled for 4:20, 4:20 at 4 p.m. Eastern. And Jeremiah Harding has already, I guess he accepted this. I mean, I just said, yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do it. That's fine. I'll debate anybody on this stuff. And this is the post, because it's not a tweet anymore, right? On X. This is the post that Jeremiah Harding made. He says, debate scheduled on Agora's Agora podcast, scheduled 4:20 at 4 p.m. Eastern. Topic, quote, is AI a genuine threat to humanity, ? End quote. Opponent, Brian Sovryn. Should say doctor, but okay, that's fine. Looking forward to it. Lots of time to prepare and get a really solid case. Y'all already know. Resident anti-AI extremist hedgehog. So I think everybody's going to have the opportunity to be a part of this live and to listen to it live. I haven't done a debate, like a genuine debate. It's probably been a while. Last time would have been... Oh, fuck. What was I ripping on? What was that bullshit? Oh, Steam It. I was ripping on Steam It. I called into Free Talk Live, and it was a little bit of a back and forth. I mean, we weren't on at the same time, but it was like one after the other. I followed up Jeff Berwick, and it was a formal thing that was set up for Free Talk Live, where, Jeff Berwick would call in and then I would respond. And I remember it being very funny, because on social media, everybody's like, holy shit, Brian Sovryn's going to rip this guy to shreds. So not that that's hard to do with Jeffy B, but, excuse me, continuing on. So Jeremiah Harding, yeah, again, I mean, I've listened to his podcasts now, okay. I kind of have an idea of what he means by AI, but I mean, it wasn't just this. Just so you know that this is coming up, and certainly, I'll post about it in Discord when it's going to happen. But I got a lot of questions around it, and you know what the biggest problem is? Like, I'm just going to touch on this quick here. I might do a full Sovereign Tech R about it, but the problem is when I feel like I'm the one of the few. I know I'm not the only. There's no way I'm the only. But I'm one of the few people who qualifies what he means by AI. And what I mean by that is, I tell you what form of AI we're talking about here. And this is one of the big problems, is because most people who, and I want to say this somewhat respectfully, who don't know any better, okay, like who aren't in the field, they just lump everything AI together. Like they want to think it's the Manhattan Project or something, when it's not, okay? Like, LLMs are not separately being developed to, say, work with the robots that Boston Dynamics is making. Like, they're just not. For many reasons we know this. Okay, that's not what it's about. So this is what's so difficult about it. And it'll certainly be, I already made it clear that this has to be kind of the start of the debate, is what the fuck are we talking about when we say AI? Because, yeah, in the popular consciousness, there's just this notion of artificial intelligence, and usually most people instantly think Skynet, and because of that, and credit to the Terminator movies, I'd say most of them are great. It's kind of created that connotation, okay, that confluence. But that's just not the reality. Like, machine learning and artificial intelligence are two different things. Like, they really are. And I know they're like, oh no, Apple just came up with the word machine learning. No, they really are very different things. And just like LLMs are not the same thing as other forms of what could be called AI. It's not the same thing as other algorithms. It's not the same thing as this. It's not like LLMs are not the same thing as the quote unquote AI that's built into kind of the Hive computer system of an F-35, of an F-35 flight group, right? Like, they're just not fucking the same thing. Like, look, you can look at the code. They're not designed to do the same thing. They're not even close to the same fucking thing. They have nothing to do with each other. Nothing to do with each other. They are not being independently developed, and that there's some puppet master pulling the strings and putting them all together eventually until they drop like an A-bomb. Like, that's just not fucking happening for a billion reasons, to say nothing of the fact that... I mean, look, the F-35 doesn't even have the RAM to run an LLM. Do you understand? And this is my problem, is that you get people coming out and saying, oh, ChatGPT is this, ChatGPT is going to do this, and blah, blah, and what's going to happen when it's ChatGPT 20? And it's like, it doesn't matter what it's going to be when it's ChatGPT 20. It's not programmed to do anything that you think it's planning to do. It's not there. Okay? Holy fucking A. Like, man, the people I just want to shake and say, you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. These things, like, there are things, okay? As an analogy, it'd be like asking DVD software, okay? It'd be like asking DVD software to do spreadsheets. It can't. It's software code specifically, cleanly written to play DVDs, not generate spreadsheets. It's not Excel. Okay? It's not LibreCalc. It's not Lotus 123. It's just not what it is. But then, you listen to these people, and they're taking all these disparate stories, like, oh, ChatGPT is doing this, and Predator drones are doing this, and they're somehow like, oh, these two things are related, when it's not even fucking close. I mean, It's not even... What's the line from Pulp Fiction? It's not even the same league. It's not even the same fucking sport. And it's not. And so many of the questions that I got in response to that episode, like, this is the answer to your questions. Is that, no, you're conflating things. You're putting things together that have abso-fucking-lutely nothing to do with each other. Okay, they are not, it's not the A-bomb, it's not the Manhattan Project where this guy's developing the trigger mechanism, this guy's developing the, the reaction, or the atomic reaction, this guy's developing this. They're not related. Not only are they not related, like, there are some things that we could call AI that are very inexpensive to run. Very inexpensive to run. Very easy to run. They could run on a smartphone, no problem. In fact, they do. Okay? Like AI, quote unquote, AI that erases. Okay? Like what was it? Like Google's Magic Eraser in the Photos app. It's not an LLM. It's not. Okay? And that can run totally locally. Now, an LLM to run locally need some serious fucking balls, especially if you have a gigantic data set, which that's what everybody's expecting. It's like, oh, well, we just plug all of human knowledge into something, into some, government DARPA program, and then it will know who to go out and attack and kill and who to hide certain information from and all this stuff. And it's like, man, do you realize look, the laws of physics being what they are, the math, that you have to do, the resources required to run that shit. I mean, right now, everybody's already talking about, now again, I haven't exactly experienced it, but I've seen the evidence to make the case, that like GPT-4 has gotten dumber over time. Now, the going theory around why it's gotten dumber is because OpenAI literally can, even with all access to Microsoft Azure, okay, arguably the second largest, next to Amazon, the second largest server system in the world. Okay, so it's not happening on-prem. They couldn't even begin to dream of that. Okay, you have all that access to that, and you still don't have enough computing power. Again, you have fucking Sam Altman going around with the fucking, eye patch and the tin cup saying to, the billionaires of the world, look, I need $10 trillion. That's not an exaggeration. That's what he's saying. Now, I told you, that's fucking lowballing at what he needs to build out the infrastructure required to make ChatGPT do anything remotely like what people are fucking afraid of. That's my problem, is that these are not, what's the broadest term I can use? These are not technologists talking about technology. Now, there's value in people outside of a space, outside looking in. There's value in that. People who can think somewhat outside of the box. I'm not saying that there isn't value in that, and I'm not saying that people don't have a right to their informed opinion. They don't have a right to their opinion. Okay, they just don't. Stupid is, stupid does. You don't have a right to your opinion. You have a right to an informed opinion. But you have a right to your informed opinion, and if it's slightly informed, okay, fine. And it's okay if you're outside looking in. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. But when you come face to face with the hard code of the matter, you got to check yourself. You got to say, well, right, okay, it can't do that. And we do. We have highly developed, with massive data sets, open source versions of LLMs. We know what they can do. We know what they're meant to do. And it is not the horror fucking story that everybody's talking about. Look, man, I mean, this is the other thing too. I'm almost 20 minutes in and I'm talking about this. This should have been in the episode. Maybe I'll just cut it and pop it into a Sovereign Tech R along with some other commentary. But like, again, I don't want to blow my load here before the debate, but like, I know what I'm walking into. And it's a lack of understanding of how these things work. These things, there are things that you can, there are times where you make connections, okay, between like a story that appears on, CNN and a story that appears, I don't know, on InfoWars or whatever, okay? There's a time when you make that kind of connection, and then there's a time where they're just not related. They're just not. I mean, I have tons of aces up my sleeve of how I'm going to present this and talk about this. Okay. But I mean, yeah, we got to get into some other questions here. I want to have some fun with this stuff, and I got all hot and bothered. That's the magic of the BDSM Studio 5, baby. It gets me fired up. Okay, let me just make these quick 2 points. Like, I'm not here to defend the fucking tech giants. Well, okay, I won't say that. But for the past few years, everything you know of me, I mean, I call these fuckers the Sinister Six for a reason. I'm not here to defend them. Who the fuck simps for a bunch of goddamn billionaires? Not me. So it's not like, Brian's fighting for the AI. The fuck I will. No. I have no interest in that. What I do have an interest in, and this is my second point, what I do have an interest in is people being aware of, like, look, you want to be afraid? Hey, I hear you. There are things to worry about. I just want to make sure people know what they should be fucking worried about. ChatGPT is not one of them. Microsoft Copilot is not one of them. Claude 3 is not one of them. Oh, by the way, talk about kind of prophetic. I had said in that episode, and I had said in previous Sovereign Tech episodes, that I thought Claude was the top performer as far as LLMs go. I've gotten a little bit of heat for that. But then what did we get from an independent report about a week ago? Actually, it was like 2 or 3 days after I put out that episode. We get a report that says, oh yeah, Claude 3 actually does perform better than GPT-4 and GPT-4 Turbo. That's exactly what I told you. Okay, I know what I'm talking about when I use these things. I have the metrics in which I have the analytics, the way that I test these things. I am not blind at this, okay? I do this for a living. Am I worried that, if I talk bad about LLMs, about AI or whatever, that I'm going to lose my job? I don't give a fuck about that. Money's never kept my mouth shut. So, anyway, you want to be worried about things? There's things to be worried about. But it sure as fuck isn't generally what you read on the internet. So, okay, moving right along. I guess maybe that's just a taste of the debate to come. Not that, I mean, I think we're planning to keep it kind of professional, even though this Jeremiah Harding guy can really go off. I don't know. You're walking in with a heavyweight, man. All right. And I'm guessing he doesn't know who I am. I mean, or maybe he does. I don't know. I mean, I was amazed, like, listening to him and, like, looking at some of his work and everything. I'm like, wow, like, I mean, I get it that he's not exactly an ANCAP, but I'm like, wow, libertarianism and ANCAPism and everything, like, that's really still going for some people. Like, he had some gal on as a guest on the show, and they're, like, Anarcho-Poco still goes on? like, you guys haven't caught the scam yet? Okay. Anyway, so I'm shocked. I'm not to say that I'm displeased. I had no fucking idea, that was still like that much alive. But, I guess you get generations that grow up and, they take over and try to pick up the ball and run with it when they don't realize they shouldn't even play the game. But okay. All of that said, the AI debate is coming April 20th. And I've got, like everything I just said, that's the tip of the iceberg of the things I could talk about. But again, it's all going to come down to what kind of AI are we talking about? And if it's everything, then we kind of have to go piece by piece, and also, if the claim is that it's some kind of Manhattan Project style thing, that, everybody's working on different things to create this AI. You got to bring the evidence for that. Like, you've got to show me the connective tissue between OpenAI and whoever else, I need to see that. Anyway, okay, enough of that.
The Agora podcast is covered by a BIPCOT no-gov license. Use and reuse is free and encouraged by anyone except governments or their agents. Find out more at bipcot.org. All right, welcome back to the Agora podcast. Today we have something new, really cool, kind of novel for us. We have a debate. Sec, we're back, and I guess you're moderating today's debate. So just why don't you go in and tell us about it?
Yeah, I've never moderated a debate before, so this will be a first time for me. So I will do my best. Today we are having a debate on the question of, is AI a genuine threat to humanity? Arguing for the positive will be Jeremiah Harding. Arguing to the negative will be Dr. Brian Sovryn. I would like to see both of you try to remain, civil. Don't be a dick rule.
Fucking ideally.
Yes, ideally. And then
do my best.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so the debate structure will go as follows. We'll have opening statements from each of you for including, and I would like to see an introduction and also definitions. What is AI? What is a threat? At some point in this debate, I would like to know, like, if there is a threat, when? Are we talking about 5 billion years from now, next year, 10, 50, the next generation, that sort of thing, if we can get that far. After that, if there is no semantic disagreements, we'll go into oral arguments, which will be 10 minutes each. Then they'll be allowed for a rebuttal, 5 minutes each. And then you can we're going to open up the debate a little bit, and you guys can poke holes in each other's arguments and ask each other questions or whatever you would like to do. And then closing arguments at 5 minutes. If there is some sort of semantic debate, obviously we're going to have to put a little more a semantic disagreement. We're going to have to put a little more of a debate section into that to iron that out, so we're both talking about the same thing.
We're not just gonna fling shit at each other and act superior and talk past each other and never get to an actual solution, so that the entire thing is just semantic bullshit. Damn, I thought this was Steven Crowder kind of shit.
No, everybody's cool here. I consider both of you my friends. It doesn't have to be a hostile discussion. We can actually, I think it would be more useful and valuable to everybody if it wasn't. So I've never hosted a debate or moderated a debate before. I will have a timer. I won't be bust your balls. I'll let you finish a thought or a sentence or whatever if you're coming close to your time, but I will let you know when your time is getting close. And then also my personal biases, and this I should probably put up front in case there is any. I will try to remain as neutral as possible. I think I probably agree more with Jeremiah's position from the start. Although
it's rigged. It's all rigged.
Yeah. But at the same time, I do recognize that these sorts of scares do run through. I've been in a conspiracy circle since before the first fucking World Trade Center bombing. So I've seen these waves come through conspiracy, and I don't mean that pejoratively. I see these things go through, threats and scares like this come through conspiracy circles, or each generation thinks the world's going to end. So I recognize that as a sort of a flaw in my potential flaw in my thoughts about AI. Anyway, so I think I can remain fairly neutral on this topic. But
in regards to that,
any bias that is my fault. I will try to keep it out of this discussion.
Yeah, I'm not moderating the debate, but in regards to that, I mean, I think you're right. Obviously, I would tend to agree with the last thing you said about the conspiracy circles and everything, but actually, this could be something totally different. And not only that, on the other hand, like people have been including something along these lines. I mean, AI can mean a lot of things, but people have been including something along these lines into fiction for like decades, and I mean, many decades at this point. So it's like definitely something I think that is not just the latest kind of fad of like society's going to collapse or get, conspiracy theories. I guess just to balance out what you said, though, I mean, I think that I by default seem to fall more into, because I'm not terribly like engaged in this debate, or I absorb so much of it anyway that I think I have been thinking about it more, obviously, since we announced this. But I kind of fall into more Dr. Sovryn's position, because I don't really care too much to be getting engaged in this debate. So I must not think, therefore, that it is a threat to humanity. But I'm very open to the idea that I'm totally missing out on this.
Don't worry,
Okay,
I'm here to black pill you.
All right. Well, we got mine and Penguin's position, so I think that's useful for the audience in case they detect any sort of bias. I just want to remain as neutral as possible.
Something I want to get in really quickly, and if Jeremiah doesn't agree with this, that's okay. But the term conspiracy or conspiracy theory might come up a lot. I mean, I don't have it necessarily planned for myself, but if it does, or if I do say it, I want to make it clear, like, I don't always mean that in the pejorative. In fact, most of the time I do not. Like, I don't necessarily see that as a negative, because there are many of these that have come very true. Among other things. And I mean, not all conspiracies are malevolent either. So I just want to, get that out there, that if that term flies, just for the listeners to know that I don't necessarily mean that in the pejorative when I use it.
And
That's
I
fair.
literally identify as a conspiracy theorist. If somebody says,
Bingo.
That's a conspiracy theory, I say, well, thank you, because the scientific process includes like theory as the final step of rigor. So you want to tell me that like I've tested my hypotheses against various constants and variables, and that I've like had good methodology and sound enough like principles that I can come to a theory? Thank you. I thought so too. Aww.
Okay, so what I think is fair, and I appreciate that from both of you, but what I think is fair, since Brian has had more time on this podcast, I'm going to let...
No. I play black. You go first, Brian.
Well, I was going to give you the choice to go first or second.
I play black all the time. Chess
Okay.
Anytime. And usually I win when I play black in chess, which is not common, apparently. Anyway, go.
Okay, so Brian, you're going to have the first opening argument, and I'm going to start your time in 3, 2, 1.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start off with introducing myself. I think that has bearing. So I am Dr. Brian Sovryn. Again, people who've listened to this show a lot are no stranger to me. But that doctor, by the way, the doctorate has nothing to do with AI. It's actually a doctorate of divinity. Of course, if you talk to the now fired Google engineer and AI researcher Blake Lemoine, he's a Christian mystic priest who would actually say that a doctorate of divinity would have everything to do with AI. In fact, he's one of the latest in a long line of people who claim that AGI, that being artificial general intelligence, already exists as of 2022. So I'm here really as someone I've worked in the tech sector for the past 20 years, as well as in the military, and more recently with companies heavily invested in AI models. So to say that with my experience and really the hard reality of the past 75 years, I'm going to be coming from the position that AI either A, doesn't exist, or B, likely never will. It's a topic I've covered countless times on my own tech podcast, that being Sovryn Tech, over its run since I started in 2012. In that capacity, I am officially a tech journalist as well. And point being that even in that capacity, the subject is far from new to me. So I both work in it very much, as well as have been reporting on it for a very long time at this stage. Of course, I mean, I don't know if we know what this podcast is about. Me saying that I am an anarchist probably would go without saying, but I'll put that out there as well. And I'm certainly not interested in empowering authoritarianism in any form, just to make that clear. So clarity is really where I want to start here, and clarity in terms, because one of the biggest problems with the subject of AI, not AI itself, one of the biggest problems with AI is I feel that most people don't really know what AI is. They don't know what it means. Now, I'm not going to get into a gigantic diatribe here, not going to be reading off of Wikipedia or anything along those lines, but it's important to recognize that when we talk about AI, that's actually a lot of different technologies. And it would actually take this entire podcast to go over all of them, what comprises them. Okay, so I want to start off with that, because then we have a common ground of understanding what we're talking about when we're talking about artificial intelligence, or when we're talking about potential concerns or perhaps real concerns that exist right now around things that are labeled as AI. And I want to be very clear on that as well. Labeled as AI, because that term, again, just gets tossed around. Journalists, tech journalists, and speaking as one, and somebody who also works in the PR industry, okay, tech journalists are the worst about this, because what are they trying to get? What is really, and it's not just tech journalists, what's any journalist trying to get? They're trying to get clicks. They're trying to get social media reacts. They're trying to get all these other things. And fear-mongering is a great way to do that. Okay. Now, it's not only the journalists as well who like to play fast and loose with definitions around AI. The companies, for example, OpenAI, which is probably the biggest in the limelight right now due to ChatGPT, among other things, as well as DALL-E and other technologies, okay? They like to, including their very now famous, or perhaps infamous, depending upon your perspective, their CEO, Sam Altman, or he's their CEO again. That's a whole other story that we don't have to get into, the drama around the C-suite with OpenAI. But he likes to play fast and loose with what he means by AI. And now, why does he do that? Well, if the journalist is playing fast and loose with fear-mongering and these terms, and again, fast and loose with the definitions, what are they actually talking about when they say AI? Why would he, they're doing it for clicks. Why is he doing it? Well, to some degree, it can be very much the same thing. While he can be out there, and Elon Musk and whoever else, take your pick of the CEO who's in any way interested in AI, and let's be clear, AI is the subject du jour in Silicon Valley, okay, and in tech cities around the world. They're doing it to get investors, okay? So very quickly, with 30 seconds, I want to just talk about what some of the different types are. So at the highest level, we have three. We have narrow AI, which is what most people encounter. These are like the ChatGPTs and so on, and algorithms and other things that you encounter in varying technology that you use. Then there's AGI, or general AI, artificial general intelligence. This is getting closer to your Skynet. And then there's super intelligent AI, which would be something that is actually smarter than humanist, where Skynet might be smart as human. Super intelligent AI would be that much more. And I'll concede for now and get into more definitions later.
So I'm an asshole who talks about shit online. I've spent a significant amount of time researching things, and I've looked into quite a bit of like the tech world, because one of the things that I'm an asshole about is the slow encroachment of a technocratic dystopia. And I've watched this build itself in other countries. If the question is, one of the questions is, how long does it take for this to become a threat? I would argue that it's already a threat, and that the threat is absolutely fucking massive. And I would also argue that the term, because I think that all of this qualifies as intelligence, and in this term artificial intelligence, because it's created by humans, and not by some natural process. The general vibe that I want to give off is that of sort of acknowledging the roots of the word. I'm not reading off Wikipedia, but I will be reading some reference source material from the Online Etymology Dictionary. Knowledge, from the late 14th century, as capacity for knowing, understanding, and familiarity. Also, fact or condition of knowing, awareness of a fact. Also, news, notice, information, learning, organized body of facts or teachings. And I'm bringing that up because I'm also going to bring up learning, study, action of acquiring knowledge, verbal noun from learnen, meaning knowledge acquired by systematic study, extensive literary and scientific culture, is from mid 14th century. Learning curve attested by 1907. Further, intelligence, the highest faculty of the mind, capacity for comprehending general truths. Faculty of this is from 1400. Faculty of understanding, comprehension, from Old French intelligence, and directly from Latin intelligentsia, understanding, knowledge, power of discerning, art, skill, or taste. From intelligentum, nominative intelligence, discerning, appreciative, present participle of intelligere, to understand, comprehend, and come to know. Now, the reason that I bring these things up is because before they even had computers to begin with, before they had algorithms, before they had AI in video games, before they had AI in a variety of forms, what they had was an understanding that basically intelligence is the ability to perceive and collect knowledge of a specific thing and then apply that knowledge in a specific way. I would contend that even though it is not AGI, something like, scraping a bunch of publicly available information and then like having a programmed in code to understand how to use that public scrape information, that is intelligence. It's rudimentary intelligence, but it's exactly the kind of intelligence that you would expect from an infant and then a toddler and then a small child. The kinds of things that you could get out of rudimentary beings. Additionally, you can get a similar amount of rudimentary intelligence from a variety of other biological life. Any biologist could confirm this, and there's probably at least one in the chat because I think Rose is watching. Feel free to let me know if I'm full of shit, if you are in chat, Rose. But like the general vibe that I want to convey is all of these things are intelligence. And the fact that they are artificially generated, in fact, does make them artificial intelligence. The extent, the like wow factor of certain things might mean that certain journalistic outlets hype it up, might mean that certain people seeking investment hype it up. But the fact of it being intelligence and artificial should be something that we understand at a base level, because the only real requirement for intelligence, for like as long as time remembers, is that you're able to gather and ascertain information. And they're building these structures so that that gathered and ascertained information can be used for their active control purposes. And since I am an anarchist conspiracy theorist, I am against all of that shit. And I want to crush the people who are responsible for creating the modern AI technocratic fascist dystopian state that we are all currently participating in, and also will get worse and worse over time because of the investors and the journalists and all of the cucks who are making themselves a party to this system.
Okay. Let's stop right here. I'm not entirely positive that I understand both of your definitions of AI, nor what you think of as a threat. And I also have some idea, but I don't think you guys are talking about the same thing. So I'm going to give you both a minute and a half each, if you feel that's enough time, and just work on straight definitions so we can nail down the semantic things before we move on. So we're actually arguing about the same things. So Brian, I'm going to kick it back to you. Let me get my nifty timer going again. 30 seconds. And just try to define the two terms, in at least in the question at hand, of threat and what is AI. All right, I'm gonna 3, 2, 1.
Artificial intelligence, I think itself is actually, that's a problematic term. I hear Jeremiah's definitions on what is intelligence. I feel that it's a little bit broad, in application. But I understand that. I don't know that I would exactly disagree with what he's saying, but then having a umbrella term like artificial intelligence is part of the problem, because what technology are we exactly talking about? Are we talking about LLMs? Are we talking about large language models? Are we talking about computer vision, where it's something that's designed to, that's based upon visual input instead of text input? So part of my argument is that when we're talking about AI, it's created a larger boogeyman that really doesn't exist, because when you break down the different types of what get called artificial intelligence, you find out they're not really connected at all. So I would have to go through and just lay out some of these differing terms, differing concepts. And if I were to put it very quickly as to what I am not arguing for, but maybe more against, is the idea that ChatGPT 20, granted we're only on version 4.5, but ChatGPT 20 is somehow going to become Skynet. And my argument is that is practically impossible to happen. It can't, because that's not even what it is. You're telling a toaster to wash a plate, and it's just not in the programming. It's not how it works. And that's a major thrust of my argument. So when I say artificial intelligence, yes, it's when most people say artificial intelligence, it's encapsulating a lot of different types of technology, like natural language processing, deep learning, machine learning, robotics. There's a lot of these things. But the problem is that these get conflated into one thing. And so we read a bunch of stories or hear about a bunch of technologies getting developed, yet those technologies are not even remotely related to each other. And it's not a Manhattan Project situation either. They're just not related to each other.
All right,
they're
that's
not being
time.
developed by, yeah, okay, good enough.
Jeremiah, give me 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. And you got 1:45, because that's what he did.
So, like, from now?
Go now.
All right. So basically, the general gist is all of that is AI, and instead of saying that some of it like isn't and some of it is, I'm just saying it all is, and then I put it on a sort of sliding scale, and certain things, certain elements of AI, certain ways it's being applied are less of a threat, and certain ways that it's being applied, and some of them are even fucking awesome. And I'm going to say that just for, complete good faith thing here. I'm not saying that there's no way that it can be applied that isn't beneficial. And I'll detail some of that shit a little bit later. But what I'll say is they're all the same. And I put them in terms of being AI at that base level. And then I put them on a sliding scale about danger to liberty. And there's a shit ton of it that is dangerous to liberty. There's a shit ton of it that is dangerous to humanity. And having that sliding scale means that I can differentiate in my mind the threat level of certain AI versus other. Sort of I can differentiate the threat level of certain non-artificial intelligence. For instance, the normal intelligence, we've got normal intelligence on a human level, and the food bank worker or soup kitchen worker is liable to be less of a threat to me than the Nazi or the CCP officer. And those are two different types of applications of a similar intelligence. When I'm talking about intelligence, I'm talking about it as a neutral thing, and I'm talking about artificial intelligence as a neutral thing as well, that can be then placed on a sliding scale based on its threat level. But I'm not conflating anything. I'm just saying what it is, and then saying that it in general, because of the way it's been applied, is definitely a threat. And by a threat, I mean a way to reduce the liberty or the attack the humanity or the life of living beings. What we're talking about is a threat to humanity here, and I firmly believe that it is, as a general concept.
Okay, so for the purposes of this debate, should we define threat more broadly in the sense that as a detriment to human flourishing, we'll say, and that could mean everything, but from a reduction in human liberty all the way up to, Skynet and extermination. Is that fair?
Yeah, and also just
Yeah, I think we'd have to.
Yeah.
And also just like human living like experiences, like generally a threat to like what makes humanity worth being human, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Brian, what do you think?
Acceptable.
That's acceptable. Okay, so and
existential
we are
and
not,
also physical threats.
and it's my understanding that we're not actually narrowing a definition of artificial intelligence. You were actually in this debate, we're including things like large language models, chat bots, and whatever, chat GPT, and all that kind of stuff, all the way up to like sentient artificial general intelligence. We're including all of those things, correct?
I am.
You are.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure if I can't understand, then the audience might not be understanding. So that's where we're at, just to make that clear. So now we're going to move to opening arguments. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Opening arguments. And I'm putting 10 minutes on the scale. You still want to go second, Jeremiah?
Yes.
Okay. Brian, let me get my timer set. And in 3, 2, 1, you got 10 minutes.
All right. One of my favorite authors of all time. Well, first off, I'll explain this. I have a method that I wouldn't dare say I created it myself, but that I call the science fiction method. It's like the scientific method, but instead it's the science fiction method. The reason I think science fiction is so important, and this is absolutely relevant to what we're talking about here, I don't think anyone would argue that, because for most people, their concepts of artificial intelligence come from science fiction abstracts, whatever those happen to be. If they happen to be from my unfortunately dearly departed friend, Harlan Ellison, and his concept of the Terminator, or whatever it ends up having, wherever it comes from, the Terminator is probably the most famous. But long before even Harlan was writing about it, and then James Cameron would make a movie about it, you had people warning about this. These kinds of ideas, these kinds of worries and concerns are far from new. And one of my favorite science fiction authors is Frank Herbert. Now, he's somebody who you could spend all day with the science fiction method. And I didn't explain what that was. The science fiction method, basically, science fiction is important to us because of the rapid change that we go through as a civilization, as much as I wish we weren't a civilization. The rapid change that we go through is very difficult for the human mind to constantly comprehend. It can be as simple as things from one day eggs are bad, the other day eggs are good, all this stuff. Information due to scientific or due to research and everything else going on, the speed at which everybody moves now, things change so quickly, the human mind was not made to operate in that way and to handle information at that speed. So the science fiction method is important because it allows the human mind, science fiction effectively is what allows the human mind to war game the potential, the danger potential of any development or new technology that we encounter and that we develop ourselves. Okay. And this is what I call the science fiction method. And so meaning that we use science fiction, we use fiction to figure out where could all of this go wrong before we go too far with it, perhaps. It doesn't mean we're always going to stop it. It doesn't mean we're always right. I don't think James Cameron is right. Okay. But it's helpful. So I often like to appeal, especially with technology, I like to appeal to some science fiction here and there because these authors have been wargaming this stuff for decades. Frank Herbert being one of them very early on with AI. And he has a phenomenal quote from his most famous work, of course, Dune, that being, quote, "Once men turned their thinking over to machines in the hope that this would set them free." Sounds very much like today, right? Breaking in. Continuing the quote, "But that only permitted other men with machines to enslave them," end quote. Now, it's a phenomenal quote. And I think a lot of people take this as, to say, see, we make these. In fact, you continue on with Dune, and Frank Herbert would have a passage in what's known as the Orange Catholic Bible to say that, thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of the mind of man. Okay. But what Frank Herbert's really warning about isn't about machines. most people don't get the quote. The quote says, but that only permitted other men with machines to enslave them. Okay, so the issue for me ultimately doesn't come down to artificial intelligence. The issue ultimately comes down to the people behind it. Okay, I could get into a litany as a complete science fiction dork. I could get into a litany of stories where a lot of this has been explored. But the odd thing is that, minus perhaps Skynet, which may be why it's the most popular form of this, where it always ends up being a person, even though you think that, I mean, like I think of Ira Levin's "This Perfect Day," another very famous story from the 70s, about artificial intelligence, where you have Unicomp and it's controlling everything, and humans, can only have like sex for 10 minutes every week and whatever. Well, you find out eventually, actually, there's just this person behind Unicomp that's controlling it, and Unicomp doesn't really work. Interestingly, in that story, they continue to go on to explain that, well, AI can never work because of the resources that are required. And that ultimately is a big part of my argument against the concerns, the threat that AI is supposed to be. Okay, my argument would in many ways be that most people don't understand. And I'm not knocking anybody for this, because I don't want to pay attention to this stuff any more than anyone else does. Not really. I'd be just as happy that half of the technology that I even talk about existed. Okay. Like if it didn't exist, I'd be, it'd be a parade in my house. Okay. But the resources to do half of what people think that AI is going to do, even something as, and granted, some people don't think this is benign, but some people, I would argue something as benign as, say, the usage of ChatGPT, okay, or Microsoft Copilot or Google Gemini, or take your list or take your pick of which one. What it takes to run even something as simple in AI, which LLMs are on the lower rung. They're really not even close to AGI here. Okay, and I can get debated on that if people want to, but I assure you that they're not even close. And again, it's a situation of you're asking a toaster to wash plates. Like it can't do it. Okay. But what it takes to even just run an LLM is an enormous amount of, and when I say resources, I mean servers, the amount of hardware that are, network hardware that's required to do it, even the cooling system. A lot of people might remember the very famous NSA setup in Utah, where they're just it's a data center where they're just trying to bring in all the data in the world that they can. And they just keep bringing in hard drives, and they're using however many millions of gallons of water per day just to keep the thing cool. To run an operation like that, I mean, if you ran it long enough, you could end up draining the oceans, eventually. Okay. And so the resources to even do what people are talking about, because the next example would come, it's like, okay, well, ChatGPT is benign, sure, but then what happens when you plug in ChatGPT into an F-35? What happens if you plug ChatGPT into a Predator drone? Okay, well, here's the issue with that. An F-35, or a Predator drone for that matter, okay, and we can even talk about more modern models. Now, F-35s, for example, yes, they actually do have something that could be called an AI. It could be called an algorithm, and it does have what could be called machine learning, which is a type of AI where they actually, if you had a fighter group of F-35 jets, they learn from each other, okay, what to do next. Now, while that sounds so scary, okay, none of that is at the level of operating something even close to an LLM, like say ChatGPT, which is what I keep bringing up ChatGPT, but I feel like that's what so many people, that's what brought it on their radar again. Because I mean, this isn't the first go round for AI, obviously. We've had so many AI winters in the 60s. Everybody was excited about it with Marvin Minsky, and all these groups in Dartmouth who were like, oh yeah, we're going to have, I mean, literally you have Marvin Minsky in 1964 saying we're going to have artificial general intelligence in 5 years. Okay. You have And then in the 70s, you get the Lighthouse Report, and suddenly, UK and US funding on AI just instantly stops in the 70s. Then there's a resurgence again in the 80s, and you start ending up with things like like IBM's Watson and so on. But again, when people start, you develop a separate programming language for it, like Lisp, and the funding just goes away because once they realize, in particular in the 80s, when the Lisp machines were being developed, which were just getting applied in business and medicine, and I don't even think people were really scared of it at that point. And that's ultimately what IBM's Watson ended up doing, was working within medicine as well, because it seemed to be the only place that it could get applied. But those machines, it was found out just how resource intensive. I mean, there literally are not the resources on planet Earth to operate these things in the way that they wanted to do. And so you ended up with, at the end of the 80s and the early 90s, AI suddenly becomes a quiet subject again. Then you get ChatGPT becoming a thing today. We get ChatGPT becoming a thing today, and suddenly everybody's all scared again. And they seem to have forgotten just how many what we call AI winters, these timeframes where AI cools off and nobody's talking about it, how many times these things have gone by. Okay. And in that forgetting, all the old scares come back. But the reality that this has happened multiple times, and you could say that it's growing pains, but you can only claim something, like you could say the previous AI winters were products of growing pains, but you can only call something growing pains if you've seen a success. But that's the point. The reason there's AI winters is there has been no success. So you can't call it growing pains until you have a successful product. There, to date, is no successful product. And I would even argue that everything you're seeing of AI today, the harsh reality of the resource intensiveness, how expensive and complicated it is to do these things. It's easy to get to that 90%, but then that last 10%, it's Zeno's paradox, and it falls apart. Okay, just like everybody's finding out with self-driving cars, right? We were supposed to have those already 5 years ago, according to Elon Musk. Didn't happen. Why? Because when you get to that 90%, oh yeah, we're there. When the last 10%, nope, it completely falls apart. And that's exactly what I think is happening here. This is a lot of hoopla and hype. And it's hype really, I mean, if I were to lay out an ultimate theory, it's hype to save the tech sector, which was a bubble, an economic bubble that should have popped in 2013, and it didn't. It was saved then by blockchain technology, and it was about to pop again, and it was already happening. How many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of people were laid off in the tech sector in 2023? Okay, we can look up those numbers. They're high. That's because the bubble started popping, and then AI hits. Oh, yep, let's make a big deal about AI again, because that's going to stop. That's going to stave off the bubble like blockchain did 10 years ago, and that's a big part of what's going on.
All right, that's time. Jeremiah, you ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
So, you want to talk sci-fi? Sure, let's do that for a moment, because I am a sci-fi fucking nerd. You can probably tell just from like looking at me, but the general vibe is that I have watched a lot of sci-fi. I have watched a lot of horror. And to me, in my mind, that's what I'm seeing here, is a combination, an intersection of a ton of different horror and different sci-fi. I'll start with a little bit of fear-mongering of my own. Everybody thought that optical discs were going through their winter, right? That suddenly solid-state drives were the new hotness, and that suddenly solid-state drives were going to solve all of our problems with those archaic spinning discs, and those spinning discs are going to be gone. The way of the past. We're on chip core now, and because of this solid state kind of thing, it requires massive data storage centers that require a huge amount of cooling and a huge amount of X, Y, and Z. But like ultimately, we're at a point now where the headlines have been able to accurately state that discs are having their resurgence. And why? Well, because gone are the days of a few gigabytes on a DVD. Gone are the days of like maybe a terabyte on like or like 20 or 40 or whatever on a hard disk drive. Now we are dealing with a reality where scientists have created the blueprint and certain testable working models of a 1.6 petabit optical storage disk. Now, what does that mean? It means that when you deal with the general cooling necessity for these sorts of large data centers, it's becoming easier. It's becoming easier because the tech is improving. Additionally, the Gordon Moore observation in 1965 is completely accurate still, where processing speeds roughly double every 2 years. That is the reason that the chip scare is happening right now, because the chips that the governments of the world have been basing their shit off of for all this time, those chips are getting better and better, and it's the new arms race. Every bit of this tech is the new arms race, and this new arms race is giving ground to an international sort of war between the military and intelligence industrial complexes of various countries, and also their manufacturing bases while they have manufacturing wars. And all of these things create the demand for ever-increasing computer capability, and they also increase the coarseness, increase the anti-humanity, increase the alienation from worker to product that will result in businesses increasingly demanding the replacement of a human by a machine. In doing so, they have to gradually improve the quality of the machines. The ever-increasing demand of the tech sector and states to create things that can remove the human element so that they can't resist the progress of their businesses or threaten their power structures is massive. In fact, it's usually done because people are having fun with it. And that fun that people are having with it will be their demise. To me, a really good example of science fiction accurately predicting shit is fucking Black Mirror. So many episodes of Black Mirror. You are constantly monitored. You are constantly rated. You are constantly on the hook for producing content. Your face, your likeness, your voice, your images, your everything, your creativity, your digital fingerprint, your shopping habits, your shoe size, your fucking there's this song by Adam Freeland called We Want Your Soul, and it's fucking excellent. There's another song by a band named Cold Cut off Ninja Tune, which, by the way, there is nothing Ninja Tune makes that's bad, called Everything Is Under Control. Also good. Two little sci-fi song hits that'll directly tell you how things are. And these things combined with a bunch of the different sci-fi that I am familiar with, that creates the bad mental picture, because you're talking about AI winters. Well, optical discs had their winter, and now we have 1.6 petabit drives. And computer processing is jacking up in capability so much, and it's exponential. It's like a massive spiking curve that only wants to go up now. That's where the line is. And so we are ending up with an ever-increasing, ever-broadening, ever-dizzyingly worse environment of technological capability, and it's getting cheaper, and it's getting more effective, and it's getting better at controlling people. Chinese government is doing it. Ukraine wants an entirely AI government. And America is bringing that kind of shit here. The CBDC, that is the backbone of a whole lot of Atlantic Council projects, and a whole lot of things affiliated with the WEF and various other international organizations such as the Bilderberg Group, they have been absolutely fist pumping money into the asshole of everybody on the planet so that they can get their AI pushed through. And the reason that they've been doing that is because it is already an effective means of control. It's not necessarily Skynet yet, but it will be at some point in the worst possible way. Not just Skynet, but Minority Report, where they can predict your crimes and sometimes get things wrong. Now, it might not have some chick swimming in fluid, but it will definitely have, some sort of bridge to that situation in terms of technology. Or it'll be Running Man, where in the book, the movie makes me homicidal and I could go on for hours, But in the book, which everybody should read, the main character is literally framed for crimes. And the crimes that he's framed for were very effective because they had enough of his likeness, enough these tapes that he recorded of himself, that when they wanted to, they could just make it seem like he said something he didn't, like he did something he didn't. And that's where we're getting. Because every time these things are programmed, they get better. Every time these things are programmed, even if it's just in the form of a reCAPTCHA, which is an AI programming model, they get better at reading text. They get better at identifying images. They get better at seeing your face in a facial recognition camera. Ukraine, one of the reasons that the US is helping them so much is because they are a chip and like sort of tech capital of the world. They account for half of the world's neon supply for reading discs. Not for reading discs, for creating semiconductors. And when we end up in the mentality where it's a global arms race, and it doesn't matter how many people die if we still get to have our chips and don't have to work with them evil Chinese communists, which is a hilariously laughable thing since they, practice state capitalism. When we have this global arms race of these chips will get better, and these chips will foster an environment. And Jacob, I see you in chat. I'm specifically saying the book. No, fuck the movie. But like generally, when I'm talking about these things, what I'm talking about is that upward spike. It might not seem very awesome now while it's fucking up basic features like fingers and mouths. But if it someday gets to that point, which it will, it can generate video already. OpenAI Sora is terrifying. And that combined with the absolute global cavalcade of its use everywhere, shot spotters are AI eavesdropping devices. Facial recognition cameras fucking everywhere. Facial recognitions at the checkout in your fucking store. Facial recognitions to unlock your phone. Facial recognition to unlock your PC. Facial recognition to unlock your car. Facial or vocal or whatever recognition to all of these things. Facial, vocal, biometric life. That's where we're heading already in now. And then you take that and amplify it to the point where the fact checkers get to decide which footage is AI and not. And the fact checkers are directly funded by the people who would seek to benefit the most from creating false reality. Now you get to the US SOCOM actively seeking out technology for hyper-enabled officers that will enable them to use AI for a fuck ton of shit, most notably digital deception campaigns, and you get the absolute truth that the things predicted in Minority Report and Running Man are real. We live at the intersection of those things. Brave New World, 1984, Fahrenheit 451, like Truth Stream Media would bring up, and so many other dystopian nightmares. And it's happening now, and it's only going to get worse than what it is now.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm with Jacob. I love the Running Man, so that was a significant point loss for Jeremiah Harding right there. So the next section is rebuttal, where you're both going to rebut each other's opening arguments. I think I was going to do 5 minutes. I think I'm going to do 10. Does anyone have a problem with that?
I want to be here for 8 hours, and
okay,
as long as
it
takes.
But I think 10 minutes for a rebuttal. I don't think 5 minutes might be too short for a rebuttal. What do you guys think?
I mean, it's medium,
Okay.
I have to make at least one dick joke, Go ahead.
All right. So Brian, you are up. You got 10 minutes to rebut Jeremiah's opening argument. On 3, 2, 1.
All right. Yeah. Maybe at some point while we're dick measuring, we could measure our science fiction cred. I'll probably take him, but I'm just, anyway. No, it'd be a great conversation to have. Anyway, so to rebut some of the things that were brought up by Jeremiah. Certainly there are things that I do agree
either already exist or are well on the way in active development. For example, Microsoft has been, actually for the past 10 years, has been working on predictive crime models for police. We also know that Ford, very famously, the CEO of Ford said, oh boy, this is probably 7 years ago now. He came out and said, we know every single crime that happens just based upon the data that they collect from Ford vehicles. Okay, now that's algorithmic. That's not necessarily AI. You could say it's AI that's compiling the information, sure, okay. Once again, it comes down to what does the person do with it? Because as I had said on my show at the time, if the CEO of Ford knows when every crime is about to happen, where it happened and everything, I mean, why aren't you doing anything? What the hell? I mean, granted, I don't want him to do anything. I'm a very pro-chaos anarchist, but bottom line is if if it's like the old Homeland Security thing, right? If you see something, say something. Well, apparently Ford sees a lot, and they say nothing. So even if this technology exists, it doesn't seem to get used, or at least it's very selective in where it does get used. And one of the main points I want to get into, we've already had two people defend Arnold's Running Man, which I would as well. So I won't go there. But ultimately, this technology, here's where two things have changed here. First off, I'm going to respectfully disagree on Moore's Law, because Moore's Law has shifted many, many times ever since he had first laid it out, as in the time frame it takes for that doubling to occur. And let's be clear here, we're just talking about like an increasing of transistors within, these chipsets, okay? And that doesn't always create a dramatic change in and of itself, right? Like right now, the golden shot is to get to 5 nanometer. But even if we get to 5 nanometer, you ask most hardware developers and they're going to tell you, it's not that big of a deal from 7 nanometer. It's not going to change that much. Also, I will say quickly, I'm a huge fan of physical discs. I have a massive collection of Blu-rays, and I've been arguing for that for many years, that it never died. And actually, we've known for a long time that it never really died, because, and this speaks to my point earlier, that the problem of resource intensiveness, not even with artificial intelligence and all the technologies there too, LLMs, machine learning, whatever. We know the server structure that we have right now, it's to the point that Microsoft is literally dumping servers in the ocean at this point. Forget trying to cool it off like the NSA is doing in Utah. They're dropping them in the ocean to try and cool this stuff off. Now, I could spend all day talking about the environmental concerns around that, because you're literally heating up the water and you're cooking fish, at the coast, which, hey, I mean, maybe there's people who want to eat. I don't know, I'm a vegetarian, but okay, fine, right? So, but it's that dramatic. It's that much of a concern. Not only that, as an example I've brought up many times, is Facebook. How does Facebook handle just the deluge of information that they've been collecting ever since, say, 2010, 2009, when they started? They store it on Blu-rays. Like all that stuff that you think is deleted, no, that all goes on Blu-rays. They are probably the largest purchaser of Blu-ray discs on the planet. Okay, so Blu-rays never died. Like the physical discs, I mean, you're totally right on it, Jeremiah. Those things never went away. Are they getting better? Sure. Now, granted, what are they putting on those discs? It's, stuff for what we would call cold storage, right? So it's not exactly like hot, as compared to hot storage where it's accessible quickly. It takes time. But regardless, okay, so I hear you on those points. But here's what's dramatically different today. And part of what, even if the terror scenarios that you're laying out, even if, let's say they were true, it used to be, even just 20, 30 years ago, it used to be that the everyday person did not have access to the same level of technology as nation states did. Okay, like this was the time when or microphones that could like fit under your tongue or something like that. That's that espionage agents would use and whatever. Like the everyday person did not have access to these things. Okay, but we're actually at the point today. I mean, yes, the everyday person doesn't have a Predator drone, but everybody has. Ultimately, minus, say, uranium, everybody has access to the same technology that governments do today. There is actually a level playing field in the sense that the same programming that goes into every AI model, every version of AI that you can think of. In fact, most of that is being done in the private sector and just being quote unquote borrowed by the NSA and by governments and nation states around the world. Okay. There is literally a level playing field today. I mean, it's the very reason that a lot of defense spending today doesn't go necessarily to buying more guns or whatever. It goes to paying out buck bounties or paying out to hackers to get access to 0 days that they find in iOS, Android, and whatever else. This is where so much money goes, not just for nation states. It's also, you know, well, we're under corporatism, but corporations are spending a lot of money on this as well. Millions, if not billions of dollars a year going out, you know, in just trying to find these problems so that they can be used. Why? Because everybody is ultimately using the same technology. Okay. And so my concern around AI, now granted, are people smarter today than they were, you know, 20, 30 years ago? No, I'm not going to argue for that. Okay. But the difference today is that if you wanted to know how to thwart things like AI, or if you wanted to, say, attack a nation state in your own little private cyber war, today, more so than any other time in history, if ever, you can actually do that. It's an incredible thing. I mean, you have to have the knowledge, you have to take the time, but the playing field has really been leveled. Okay, so even if the nightmare scenario is true, we also have the same tools to thwart it. Granted, yes, we don't have predator drones. Like I said, we don't have access to the guns and, you know, a lot of the targeting equipment and all of this other stuff. Okay, those are very real. I get it that those are very real concerns, but those are very different than, you know, that is, we're not even remotely talking about artificial intelligence at that point. We are talking about, you know, militaries and nation states, and that is, in my opinion, a completely separate problem, really, to get into. Okay. So the other part of this all is I don't really see, I mean, you know, part of what I was preparing for with this debate was that there was going to be this argument that AGI was eventually going to become a thing. I mean, there's no evidence for that whatsoever. You know, that we're even getting close to that. It really just smells like a technology that is just, I mean, look, I'm the same person who also says the internet is actually is already a failed project. And you can see it. Why? Because you're starting to have to pay for everything. It's not free anymore. Okay. It never should have been in the first place because this is expensive to do. But the piper's getting paid in our interconnected world. And in the sense that, you know, we have to pay for it. And the reality is hitting these companies that they can't do all these things. I mean, you think Sam Altman, who, you know, again, CEO of OpenAI, he said, okay, if we want to get to where we think ChatGPT can go, I need 10 trillion. That's with a T. I need $10 trillion. $10 trillion doesn't even exist. Granted, money doesn't really exist for most of these governments, but $10 trillion, like, where are you even going to get that? What do you know, what does that even look like? How does that happen? You know, it sounds like the impossible. And I would argue that's because it is.
You got 1 minute.
So I think a lot of this, again, really just comes down to it becomes a situation where, oh, I am scared of this XYZ nightmare scenario. So we need to put in protections, whether that's appealing to government or appealing to, you know, asshat Elon Musk or appealing to, you know, whoever to come in and say, oh yeah, we'll put restrictions on it. You know, we'll slow it down. And you're really just asking them, you know, to come in. Either way, you lose. Either way, it's more authoritarianism. So I'll concede at that.
All right, Jeremiah, you're up in 3, 2, 1.
So here's the first thing. The read-write speeds on the theoretical model proposed by the Chinese folks who made the 1.6 petabit disk is actually reasonably impressive. You wouldn't have to reserve those for cold storage. You could pretty much use those for, active read-write scenarios. I mean, it's not perfect at its current state. It's not like, it's not like in its ultimate state. And in this particular situation, obviously, you would have to like be very careful with these disks because they're just large laminated versions of the same shit. So like, it's not perfect. It's not, a situation where like, oh, these disks exist. Now they're perfect state that will always be, but then tech develops, right? This model will increase its effectiveness over time. And in doing so, in having that model increase its effectiveness over time, that's what I'm worried about, especially since the things that already exist can already control a whole country. China is their use case. China is the use case of this technology in the form about which I'm concerned. And it's already happening. And it's like, this is just a rudimentary form of their control. And the persistent insistence when I bring up this subject that it's simply a neutral tool, that like, people who are angry at like AI are really just angry at the people who use AI. I don't care about the alleged neutrality of a gun when it's pointed at my fuckhole. If somebody has a gun pointed at my face, I don't care that it's simply a tool. And in this particular case, this gun is omnipresent. I was getting into some of it. We've got shot spotters. We've got AI facial recognition cameras. We've got AI lasers that can sense by your heartbeat who you are from 200 meters away, even if you're clothed. We've got AI stingray vans that can go around and like hack your technology. We've got AI that can like interpret your face under a mask and like determine who you are even if you're fully covered. We've got all of this stuff, AI that can watch your purchase history and automatically advertise to you based on that in the form of chase, and by that same token also tell the government what a naughty bitch you've been. And in general, like what I'm talking about is how it's already being applied, and how that could also trace back to a bunch of other corruption down the line. And also, like, the other half of it is how it gets its materials. Because, like, let me be super clear, the, like, biggest set of, like, stable diffusion data for image generation, like, scraped the entire internet. And this indiscriminate scraping did so at the detriment of its own data set users, because it turns out that a significant amount of the data set was compromised by child porn. And in doing so, basically, the stable diffusion images had at least a little bit of kiddie porn laced in there. And the reason I'm bringing that up isn't to be a bad faith actor and say that, oh, people who use AI are pedophiles. I've had that leveled at me when I, fucking, like, bring this up. I'm not trying to insinuate that. What I am, however, saying is that the reason it did this is because it was lazy to begin with. The model it used to get what it had was sloth. The model it used to get what it had was, we don't want to actually learn the skills to do the things we're doing, so we will get this machine to scrape all this data from the public internet, and we will use that scraped data in the form of hashes and a bunch of other shit in order to create the things that the AI has. That's why you still see the shadows of people's artist signatures on the real art, because AI images are not art. AI music is not art. I could continue saying things like that because it's a very strong pet peeve of mine when people call it art when it is anything but. Art is an expression of talent and the soul, and AI is simply telling a computer to spit something out that is based on people who actually poured enough of their time, energy, and love into what they're doing, or hate, or whatever, that they actually came out with a product. AI stripped that because it's designed by people who don't have the skills in those fields, so that they can take those fields like without having any effort of their own. And in doing so, in having this mentality, what AI basically is it's a stripping of the human at the base level. It is taking out that friction of I might have to talk to somebody else with a soul about the kinds of things that I want to be in the world. And it's taking that friction out. It's saying instead of like having to interface with other people and learn an instrument, I will get the AI to make music. Instead of interfacing with an artist who actually cared about their product, I will get an AI to use their art against them by pushing them out of the field. And it's not just that. I watched my mother have to program the tools of her own replacement by her medical transcription job, basically phasing her out and like saying that she would have to program the speech recognition that would get her like job off the market. She had to help tell it where it was getting things wrong and get more minute and more minute. And she had to use her actual intelligence of knowing how diseases were and knowing like if the doctor messed up in his wording or something like that, to like tell the AI, no, but you were wrong about this, but the rest of it was okay. And then eventually the job wasn't paying her enough so that she could sustain a living and she had to quit. So I've watched this happen. I've watched the human element get replaced. And this human element is getting replaced in so many other places. Restaurants, manufacturing, drones. It's actively being used by the military. And the Drone Racing League is a front for the U.S. Air Force, Lockheed Martin, Algorand, which is affiliated with the military-industrial complex. It's one of those Fed cryptocurrencies. ESPN and a bunch of other organizations to literally take drone data from people who are talented drone pilots and say, let's program AI drones with it. And that's why it's affiliated with AI drone technology companies that specialize in removing that human element. The moment you remove that human element is the moment when you get the drones that are capable of killing without a second thought. They don't have to think about double or triple tap. They don't have to think about the people on the ground. They're just executing commands as told. And if that ever goes wrong, like self-driving, we're looking at murders. I don't care that it's not going to be perfect. I don't care that it's not going to transcend that last 10% gap. That might be a thing that happens someday, and I'm not going to rule it out. But that doesn't matter to me for my present complaints about it. Because ultimately, what I'm concerned about is what it's already doing. And what it's already doing is fucking terrifying, dizzyingly bad, and already bad in the fact that it's watching what we say. It's censoring what we say. You want to talk Facebook. I was censored for adult sexual content because I talked about Lysander Spooner, and the algorithm probably thought I was talking about spooning. I had to wait for a manual review to send Facebook messages because I sent Lysander Spooner books. But that's like ultimately a truth here. We are being monitored by AI. We are being censored by AI. Elon Musk, fuck Elon Musk, that technocratic pissant. He is using AI. He is one of the people who is responsible for the AI dystopia that's coming. Fuck Elon Musk. Fuck Peter Thiel and his Palantir. Fuck everybody involved in that which Edward Snowden leaked. We're talking about real shit here. And this is my problem. My problem is that we're talking about things that are already bad enough. And those things that are already bad enough only have the capacity to get worse with the same technology upon which they are based getting worse. And that's what I'm talking about. We already have all of these things. And I could continue listing surveillance methods, killing methods, like arrest methods that control whole cities. If you want to talk sci-fi, I routinely compare what we already have and what it's going to get worse as to CTOS from Watch Dogs. We're dealing with very serious shit here. And it's not as simple as saying that it's some far-off flung future thing. It's happening now. And it's only going to get worse. So yes, I do think that AI is a fundamental threat. And I will continue to say that it's a fundamental threat because it always will be in this use case.
All right, that's time. Sorry, I didn't give you the warning. I was listening to what you were saying, and
I,
I lost track of the timer.
I had a stopwatch going. It's fine. I'm a
Okay.
cunt about this stuff.
Okay. And I just want to defend in Facebook's defense. Lysander Spooner is a sexy man, so there is that.
You know, I grew a beard. I have the hair. I'm competing here, and I've got like higher testosterone, so it'll take longer to gray.
All right. So the next round, we're going to do, let's say 15 minutes, and it's going to be kind of a free for all. You guys can talk back and forth. Try not to talk over each other if you can't avoid it. Let me just recap what I think your two arguments are. Now, from what I know about the two of you and from what I've seen here, neither one of you is a fan of the technocratic dystopia that we live in. Nor are either of you a giant fan of sort of what you might call cold machine logic, or what the Ents said to the hobbits in Lord of the Rings. You know, his mind is more machine and metal now than anything else, when he used to care for living things. And I think both of you are on the same page there. What I see I see the difference is Jeremiah thinks that this is something that is exponentially accelerating the technocratic dystopia, that being AI. And Brian just believes that there is upper limits on the sort of resources, even in terms of like thermodynamics and that sort of thing, that it can't be it can't become what we might think it would become. And just sort of like any other technology, yes, it might be used in nefarious ways by state and corporate actors, but that's not different in kind than any other technology that exists on the planet. Is that a fair assessment of both of your arguments? So do I understand both of you correctly?
I think you got me pretty good.
Also,
Okay.
I'm a paranoid cunt who is upset about what's already here. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm a firm believer only the paranoid survive. So yeah, I'm there.
Okay. So I have a question before we start this next section. I'm going to let you guys go nuts. But I have a question from one of our audience, and I also have a question. So I'm going to ask both of these at the same time, and then I'm just going to let you guys go talk to each other. But this is from one of our fans. He calls himself The Question. And he says, it is my view that AI is actually more dangerous and or potentially dangerous because of restrictions, both closed source and content restrictions. Part A, do you think AI is more dangerous with or without restrictions? And if so, how would you implement said restrictions? And for me, my one question is, what probability do we think that what currently exists becomes sentient enough to where it becomes an existential threat to humanity, like we have a Skynet Terminator situation? Do we think that is possible in the near future, further on down the line? But that would be my only question that I don't think has really been touched on at all here, or very little. So I'm going to start a timer for, let's say, 15 minutes, and I'll let you guys just kind of cross-examine each other. Where did my timer go? There it is. Okay. All right, go nuts.
So just to be clear, before this open segment gets started, I've been saying a lot of shit about how much I hate AI, and I do. I'm your resident anti-AI extremist, but there are some use cases of AI that I actually like. And those use cases include, for instance, I fucking hate pesticides. I hate pesticides. And anything that can reduce those pesticides' impact on the planet and on our consumption and on our T levels and on our E levels and reducing cancer might also be nice. Great. So there's an AI algorithm attached to a big fuck laser rig that will zap weeds in an agricultural context. And that's fucking excellent. There's AI that is working on cancer cures. If that doesn't result in in a worse version of the disease because the AI missed something, excellent. If we're going to use AI for things like that, you'll hardly see me complaining. Little Timmy got an AI arm for his stub, and now he can play baseball again. I don't give a fucking shit. But you know what I do care about? I care about the fact that AI, as it's currently standing, is funded and controlled by a whole bunch of evil fucks. And so when I'm talking about the existential threat, I'm not just talking about iRobot. I'm not talking about Asimov, levels of robotic competency. What I'm talking about is what we already have, and what we already have is evil. What we already have is funded and controlled by evil people. The state capitalists are running the show, and that's the reason it's upsetting to me. I'm not saying we should let them control it more, hyper-regulate it more. What I'm saying is that what we should be doing is understanding the threats that already exist and fighting those fucks.
So I'm going to play off that and kind of answer the first question that the question asked, right? And that is, I think so initially, the point that tech is just a tool. There might have been a time where that is true, or where that was true. That's not when we're talking about software and computer technology and all that. That's really not true anymore. That gets programmed by humans who are often scumbags. Okay, what's that? Biased? Yeah, no, totally biased. Okay, so but here's the thing. It's a little more nuanced. The argument is far more nuanced. Maybe the most important word anyone can ever say is nuanced, but it's a little more nuanced than just, oh, tech is just a tool, or it's, or it isn't, or it's biased or something like that. The real problem we're talking about here, I mean, to answer the question quickly, the first one that the question asked was, do I think that we should put in some kind of restrictions or programmatic restrictions of these varying AIs, say like LLMs? I mean, it depends on what AI we're talking about for sure. But in general, no, let it ride. Make it 10 times better than it is right now if you actually have the resources to somehow do that. Now, the reason I say that is because AI is not really the problem. The problem are what you ran into, Jeremiah, on Instagram. The problem are the consequences. The problem is that AI was used and it screwed up Lysander Spooner, who is sexy. I agree with everyone on that. It screwed up your picture, and there was a consequence to that. And that's ultimately, in my opinion, really the problem. And that's why I think the debate of, is tech just a tool, or is it this, or it's kind of fallacious in the sense that, no, what are the consequences of it? Well, and that's really what everybody's worried about. What do you got?
To be clear, I didn't. First off, it wasn't on Instagram; it was on Facebook specifically.
Right. Okay.
And my contention is that it was monitoring our chat, because this was in a message group, and it was monitoring us so that it could control my speech. And that is a key problem here. It's not the people that make this AI do that. The people simply set up an AI thing. The AI, the AI chose, in as much as it can do that, to do that. It's not like Zuck had his hand on the pulse. It's not like Zuck had his hand on the chat. Zuck didn't. What Zuck did was he introduced an AI model to monitor and control people, and A, it wasn't as neutral as people wanted it to be, allegedly, or B, the tool is actively counterproductive to meaningful discussions about jack fucking shit. And that's my thing.
Sure. So in that case, I mean, if we're talking about Facebook's algorithms in particular, there are engineers from Meta who have even admitted to this. They've lost control of that. They really don't. It's not just a matter of, they don't want to do anything about the Russians because the Russians pay a ton of money, for political ads on Facebook or something like that. No, they've really lost control. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you completely on that. But that they've lost complete control of that. Now, that doesn't mean it's sentient at all. It just means that it's become so complex that their programming that they've created, or they don't have the contextual programming to rein it in anymore. Those are very different. That's a very different thing than something running roughshod and being sentient, because it's not that. Or what I would actually use the word sapient. But regardless, we don't have to split those terms right now. Okay, so, but again, still the problem is that these consequences are programmed in Facebook. And I mean, my ultimate argument with that would be get off of Facebook. I mean, and I know depending upon the platform, that's easier said than done. because I know companies and I work with them who they make their primary money off of doing ads on Facebook. They need to do that to survive. So you can't always just say that. And I'll be respectful of that. But, where, again, this is a situation where I think, where is the problem? And I don't know that AI is, this is a case where, yes, I agree with the Facebook thing. The AI is the problem, but they've just lost control of it and they should just turn it off. And why they haven't, that's an answer I don't have.
But I do have an answer. It's because they're anti-human cunts. Because Facebook is a CIA-funded data gathering and harvesting tool, and they don't give a fucking shit about us. And that's the thing, though. Facebook is funded by the same people and often puppeteered by the same governmental agencies as YouTube. So if one was to say, get off Facebook because they're monitoring your content with AI, the same could be said for YouTube. And I don't think that the argument should be, Jeremiah, get off Facebook, or should be Agorapod, get off YouTube. I think the argument should be that this AI is designed so that people can be anti-human about shit, and that the AI itself is anti-humane. And in being so, in being such an affront to humanity, it is a direct threat. Because if AI can stymie discussion like this, it can stem the flow of human thought and interaction. And if our interactions are increasingly online, this is like sort of cattle running us into the same slaughterhouse. And it's controlling our thoughts. It's controlling our interactions. It's watching us so that it knows what our purchases are, what we said at Walgreens the other day, because it heard it on a shot spotter and saw us on the facial recognition camera, recognizing our gait as well, which is another fun thing, recognizing our heartbeat as well, which is another fun thing. And all of this combines with the fact that they're getting exponentially more and more of our information and could use it to create whole copies of us. Like they're raising celebrities from the dead, and they're getting like AIs to replicate your dead relatives. And this is insanity. But what they could also do that for that purpose, with enough of our personal information gathered on these AI-enabled platforms, is they could pick crimes on us. They could get the AI to say that this is indeed a fact-checked as true crime, or fact-check as true terrible thing that he said on Facebook or something. They could frame us for anything. And that's and that's what I oppose. Not just the framing, the monitoring, the control, the evil shit that they can do with this information, the manipulation, the blackmail.
Yes, but that's not the problem. Is the consequences and the people. That's not the technology itself. I mean,
the AI enabled it.
It enabled them to have that ability. I mean, so here's the other thing too, is that this kind of censorship, say, like you're talking about. Obviously, this isn't anything new. Just what they used to do 40 years ago is they'd cut off the network, right? Speaking of the Running Man, okay, and and then they put in a CGI Jesse Ventura, right? Sure, okay, I got you. But this is a scenario where it is an opportunity for humans to be better. Okay. For example, one of the most famous cases of where people are like, whoa, AI is better than humans now is with the game Go, the classic game Go, where AI actually ended up beating human Go players for the first time. What happened out of that, though, is that the Go players now have come up with entirely new strategies, unheard of in the entire history, the decades history of the game Go. And so they have become better human beings. And this is because this is the thing, we can't, we can't save people from their own stupidity. That's how governments get created. Okay. And with AI, you're just going to have to, nobody should believe what they see online anyway, at any point, for any reason whatsoever, before AI even. And so, for AI to necessarily make it worse and make, copies of us saying things, hey, let's go back to science fiction. How about, go back to V, right? V, the Final Battle. They do that big heist and they get Richard Hurd's character. They peel his face off and there's the reptilian, right? And it's on national television. Everybody saw it live, okay? And What happens? They film it the next day and they say, "Oh, it was all a terrorist hoax. Here's the actual real version without the character Jonathan getting his skin ripped off." So, I mean, none of this stuff is new. It's just that humans still, I mean, if I were to say what the real problem, there's many problems. There's never just one. But the ultimate problem is that we have a level of technology that is far and above advanced than our human capacity to handle it and to understand it. Okay. And we are challenged, including in the job market. We are being challenged right now by these technologies to become better than we are. Speaking of Isaac Asimov, one of my favorite quotes of his is that if the machine can do the job, then it was too good of a job for the man. And I agree with that. Okay. Go ahead.
So, multiple responses. The first is, if somebody's got a gun aimed at my fuckhole, I don't care that it's a neutral tool. If somebody has the weapon aimed at me, or aimed at people I care about, aimed at the world, I don't care that it's allegedly neutral. It is not neutral in the way that it's being applied, being pointed at somebody. So the general thing that I think is a good thing to understand here is that claiming the tool is neutral while it's actively fucking people over is never going to convince them that the tool is anything more than a villain and you are its apologist. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily true, that you're an apologist for a villain, but they are not going to perceive it otherwise, and they have no reason to. And if you start to trace it back, the nuance of the reasons that they have no reason to is because humanity is based on imperfection, and trying to strive too much for that inhuman level of perfection is only going to create anti-human things, because the anti-human things will be incentivized to scrub out the imperfections of humanity. So ultimately, the reason that I'm bringing all of this up is because when we get down to it, when we get down to brass tacks, the AI itself is creating the problem, because the common person is not ready for this level of power. The common person is going to use it because it's fun, because they can make images or music or videos or funny text stories that they can post to Twitter. They don't care. It's not a problem for them. And the other half of it is a huge amount of the tech advances that have helped to the military and intelligence industrial complexes. Those weren't done off the back of some rah-rah jacking off to Uncle Sam status. Those were done off the backs of some nerd who got a college grant and said that I'm going to make something that's better than the other stuff that's been made, so that I can get my way paid through college, or so that I can get a job at this tech firm, and they were largely, they didn't care about the eventual application. They just wanted to make something that would put their name out there. And that's an understandable pursuit. But what that also pseudo neutrality means is that this tech could advance hugely because the people making it are disinterested. And the people making it are trying to make something for themselves. They're trying to make a name for themselves. They're trying to increase their personal, social, and economic and socio-political power in a lot of these cases, especially when you get to more actual supervillains like Teal and Musk and fucking all the people at Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Boeing that are building AI tech that will enable the state. And not just them, but all of these surveillance tech that they're watching us with. It's not a matter of the consequence. The consequence is a result of the foundation. The foundation is the result of a group of people who are interested in isolating and controlling people. Facebook is evil. Twitter is evil. That's why these things have been funded by one or more governments. And when we're dealing with these sorts of people, these sorts of threats, it's not a matter of the consequence to me. What it's a matter of is the ability for these people to create control and to also push for the enslavement of humanity, so that the people who are authentic villains have everything they want served up to them on a silver fucking platter. That's how we get the AI dystopia. It's not just the fact that it's some neutral tool. It's the fact that people make excuses for it, while those who aren't being neutral at all, fuck us all. I'm not saying regulate it. What I am saying is that the people who are at the top are using it to regulate us, and that makes it non-neutral. You can't be neutral on this moving train.
All right, let Brian respond to that, and then we'll do closing arguments.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest way that I can put it is, I hear you. I don't disagree that a lot of these things are going on and that they're very real. I mean, and how it's being implemented. I mean, just look in China, at how like personal like personality scores, or whatever they want to call them over there. And facial recognition, where you can just walk into an airport and suddenly it knows exactly who you are and your ticket, and it just guides you with arrows which way you want to go. Like, I know all these things exist. It still feels like to me that AI, all of these concerns come down to the fact that people just either A, perhaps aren't aware, and so it's good to make them aware. B, they don't. I mean, you're talking a lot about people's, kind of their laziness, right? They're using this because it's fun, which I think kind of comes down somewhat to their laziness in ways, or that they just want to have fun. And there is a lack of personal intellectual vigilance on their part to be able to quickly see and learn. I don't believe, I mean, real quickly, I don't believe that AI is ever really going to get to the point where we can't tell when we're looking at an AI generated human being. Okay. Elon Musk is very famous for, he argues for simulation theory and everything, and says, well, and his example, and again, all he can do is point at those, because there's no actual evidence that a lot of the technologies he's talking about exist. His example would be the gaming industry, which clearly you're a fan of. Watch Dogs is a killer game. I'm with you. But his example is that, well, look at the gaming industry, how quickly graphics evolved. Okay. Just like Moore's, like we were talking about Moore's law earlier, that has almost completely plateaued. We have there's no guarantee, because a lot of what we're talking about here, there's some that exist now, yes, but a lot of what we're talking about here are things that could possibly come. And it's logical to assume that they would go that far, right? It's like, well, they went this far, why wouldn't they go that far? And I get that. But there is no guarantee that you can actually, like, there may be an upper limit to a lot of this. There's no guarantee that it's going to get that far. Just like with gaming, I don't think it's ever going to get to that level of reality. And Elon Musk is just wrong, and we've seen it. I mean, even in the industry itself, who would love to sell you new high-end game console every 3-4 years. Now they're going on to 7 to 10 years in their cycles. Why? Because they've reached their upper limit. I mean, we're getting the red ring of death. These machines are melting on top of themselves. Okay, and so the idea that, well, it's going to turn into this, I don't see any guarantee of that. And I don't want any of that either. I mean, I don't want any authoritarianism. I don't want them to have more power than they have. But again, the point I brought up earlier, we're actually at the stage where you can run, like, a lot of these technologies that people seem to be worried about. And it'd be interesting to hear what these people think that they're worried about. Are you worried about LLMs? Are you worried about ChatGPT? Because if it's just that, you can run that on your own machine, program it yourself if you take the time to learn, which most people are too lazy to do. Okay. And you can actually combat very much what's being foisted on you from, say, governments, corporations, whatever else. And so I think we're at a very rare stage, again, like I said earlier, of where okay, not with guns, but look, you're not going to win this war against the government with guns and having more guns. When a Predator drone can take you from 2 miles away, you're done. All right, I know, I've been there. It's just not going to happen. Go ahead.
So I do want to respond to just a few of these points before closing statements, because I think a few of these, will you grant me that, Sec?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Keep it short, though.
Yeah. So the thing is, I don't know if you've been paying attention to this particular thing, but this happened a year ago, and I think that you should look into this, Brian, if you haven't already. Metahuman. Just for a moment, respond and let me know if that name sounds familiar.
I'm going to say no, unless you're talking about DC Comics characters, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. All right. So, Metahuman. What Metahuman is it's an iPhone capture thing, and this is just from an iPhone camera, right? That lets Unreal Engine 5 scan a model of your face and then create an actively very hyper-realistic version of your face in a game engine. They've modeled it live on stage with multiple women, and it also lets you hot swap different faces. Any Game of Thrones fans out there will know that the many-faced god is powerful because his acolytes can just and then become somebody else. This is a digital version of the many-faced god. It already exists, and the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. It's there now. And metahuman is very much a very real thing. And that's just one of many, many types of AI technologies that can make hyper real facial copies and body movement copies. And that's just like a drop in the bucket. They're actively replicating whole ass celebrities for music videos. They're actively replicating whole ass celebrities for like holographic displays at concerts. They're doing it already.
I hear that, Jeremiah. And like you said earlier, you brought up a great point that I completely agree with, that like AI art, okay, like what DALL-E generates, that's not art. You know, that's not part of the human story. That's not I don't like the word soul, but there's no soul in it. Okay. If we're going to go Bob Dylan or Bon Jovi on it. All right. I'm with you on that. And that's the thing though, is that we know that, like, we really recognize that. If you don't, you're just too drunk and drugged up or what, I don't know, to not realize that the person has 6 fingers instead of 5 or 8 fingers, or like their left leg's running through the right leg. I mean, I got you. But even at that high level of precision, say like metahuman, like you're talking about, and I'm familiar with some other technologies like that. Okay. Even at that high level, we know, just to develop something like trust, like the desire to even want to talk to another being of some kind, or to even listen to them. What do? We've developed to look at like the whites in other person's eyes. That's a product of evolution.
And
that we have whites. What's that? It can recognize those. Yeah, I mean, and right, like NVIDIA AI can track, make sure your eyes like stay there, and it looks good over a Zoom call, but get that in real life and it falls apart. And so ultimately,
maybe, for now.
Okay. Yeah, but see, that's the thing, is that I'm arguing that I think there's an upper limit and we've hit it.
I don't.
We're very close to hitting it. For example, I mean, I've rarely seen anything look as good as Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Dr. Aki Ross in that looked phenomenal, right? That movie came out over 20 years ago, and no one's done better. Or you think of the game Crysis. Are you familiar with Crysis?
Right? Oh yeah, but like even those improved over the Crises. The first Crysis game of 3, like the first Crysis game was worse looking than the third. The Crysis engine improved things, and that engine was used as the basis for quite a bit of other engines. And in this particular case, what this engine isn't doing is just creating a human from scratch. Metahuman is copying people. So what Metahuman is doing is it's saying, we're going to take your data from all these angles and we're going to create a facsimile. Now, you take that and the fact that people are constantly staring at a phone with like cameras attached to it. You take that and the fact that the government is always looking at us through our phones, with very few exceptions to people who've like hacked their phones and like done graphene or some bullshit. When you take these things are doing that at all times with us, at all various angles, and with our bodies and all that stuff. And that if all you have to do is have a phone to do that sort of thing at hyper realistic levels, it wouldn't be a matter of generating a full human from scratch. It would be a matter of taking the data that you've given these things and like sort of let them be around and take, and it would be just using what it already has. And that can generate perfectly realistic hands with the right amount of fingers and the right lengths and shit. It can generate your cuticle pattern. It can generate fine hairs.
Yeah, the ability, I mean, and this kind of ends my argument on it, is the ability to store that amount of information, to hold it long term even, is astronomical. I mean, this is the same, you're, in my opinion, and again, I'm saying this respectfully, like in my opinion, you're making a very similar argument to like simulation theory, which we've done the math on that. You just, to create in a whole other reality. I get it. People are like, oh, but look at Elden Ring. Look at this. Yeah, I know. I understand. I'm a gamer. Like I've seen it. But that's nothing compared to the level of complexity that exists within even just between two people. And so I don't think that the resources are like, they're just not even on Earth or in the solar system, and we're not going to get any further than that.
I'm just over here being Descartes about shit, like, cogito ergo sum, kind of like fucking Cartesian skepticism. I'm going to make you a solipsist someday, Brian. You watch.
Don't worry, I'm a Kabbalist. Don't worry.
Hey.
get into all kinds of spirituality.
Yeah, that would be another fun
Yeah, that's
conversation.
another
And
show.
actually,
All
you
right,
all
let's
just
wrap it up.
exist in my head anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
You see,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, okay, I have this thing that I did with my sister, and like I'll do this with everybody else as well. That like I'll point to an object in front of them, and I'll say, "You prove to me that exists using nothing but using nothing gained from your potentially flawed senses." Because you can't. And event like the first time I did this with my sister, she actually, and I feel bad about this, I really do, but she cried because it sucks to realize that our senses are not completely reliable. But it also, later on, years down the line, at this point, it's actually something she was excited when I brought it up, because apparently that was a brain worm. It gave her enough to think about, and she's like, "Hey, do that to Dad." And so we were on this family call, and I did that with my dad, and it stumped him. He didn't have that strong an emotional reaction to it, but you could tell that it was a puzzler. And so that's what I do. The thing is, I'm all about these metaphysical sort of existential bullshit. I'm this bastard fusion of Diogenes, Nietzsche, fucking Descartes, and Sonic characters. That's where I am. So my brain is a mess. But what I'm saying is AI itself, to me, represents this threat on a significant enough level, precisely because most people won't give enough of a shit to think maybe this video is fake. They already have fake AI newscasters that are pretty photorealistic in China. And Elon Musk wants to copy WeChat, which means another fuck Elon Musk point in the fuck Elon Musk bucket. So that's my whole thing. This is already a real and very present threat.
All right, well, let's wrap this up.
I'll play Black. You take the first closing statement.
Okay, fair. Brian, I'm gonna give you both 5 minutes. Brian, if you're ready to go in 3, 2, 1.
Are a generation, I mean, granted, there's still baby boomers and others around, but we'll say we're a generation, people of the past 40 years, 30, okay, who have grown up with free email. And we have no conception of just how resource intensive these amazing technologies that come upon us. And I don't say amazing necessarily in the positive, okay? Because believe me, I'm a person who's ready to cut off the internet. I mean, I've been doing a tech show forever, and it's taught me to live in a cave, okay? So, but we don't understand, most people don't understand the absolute resource intensiveness of what it takes to, it's not even just about how many servers does it take, how much electricity does it take, how many people does it take to run all of this stuff, what is the cost of that? We already saw that come to head in 2023, partly. Like I said, it should have been coming to head in 2013. Okay, we're so programmed into, oh, this wonderful internet thing, everything should be free, and you can see it. Look what happens when Elon starts charging for Twitter. Look what happens when, whoever starts charging for XYZ feature or something. People freak out. They don't get it. They don't understand. If they did understand, they would say, yes, I will absolutely pay at least $5 a month for an email address. But how many of us do that? We don't. Okay, but that's the thing, is these things come at a massive cost, and a cost so high that you literally have the developers of this technology asking for what I would argue is the impossible. He's basically just saying, you need to write me a blank check if you want this to happen. And even that is a huge question mark of, how do you know you can do this? Like I said, he can claim, and they'll use these words. Technologists love these fucking words. They love the words growing pains. It's like, yeah, no, I know it's not perfect right now. Oh, yeah, it's screwed up here, but it's just growing pains. But as I always tell people, you can only argue for growing pains when you have a prior success story to point at. Okay? The internet has no prior success story, and I would argue it's even a failure. AI has no, in general, and even, we could say LLMs are handy, whatever. Okay, sure. I use them a lot as well. Okay. And in the medical field, being able to, I mean, there's a great argument, or there's research to suggest that the human brain was never really meant for long-term storage. We're not meant to yes, we're meant to take in a bunch of data. Maybe it's maybe it's more like a receiver than it is a hard drive. Okay. That's getting into the metaphysics of things for sure. All right. But, it could help us in those senses of, maybe we're just not designed to handle this amount of information. I would argue that we're not. And so it can make sense of all of it. Phenomenal. Can it tell us bullshit? Sure. But then that's why we have things like our gut, perhaps our sense of ethics, which can be certainly different from every other person. Okay, I'm an egoist, I understand that. But ultimately, I'm not here arguing that, I'm not an apologist for AI whatsoever. I'm just saying, understand the reality. And with everybody concentrating so hard on the concerns around this, I'm worried that they're missing on the real concerns. Okay, well, just a quick analogy on this. There was, what was it, the Chinese balloon last January, right? January 2023, that everybody was freaking out about. Had to send up an F-22 to go shoot it down. And I know I heard the conversations from people saying, "Oh, I can't believe this. The Chinese are spying on us. There's this and that and blah, blah, blah." It's like it's projected there's over 100,000 foreign espionage agents in the United States in 2023. 10,000 alone probably in DC. That's statistics, that's projections. That's over 10x what existed in the US during the Cold War. So you're worried about a fucking balloon, but there's more, and look, I don't even care about nations, so I don't care about spies and agents, whatever. They can all shit on themselves for all I care.
30 seconds.
But the point being is that people are spending time worrying about something that isn't striking the root, that may keep you from seeing a far greater danger. Okay. And also that this technology, to get to the levels of concern that people are talking about, I would argue ultimately becomes impossible for the technology. Humans have to be involved. And so the problem always comes down to the human being. So let's just be better, smarter human beings, and we can go forward. And I'll concede my time.
No, you just ended. So that's good. Why does it keep disappearing? I hate technology. Grug no like. All right. Jeremiah, you're up.
You're up. Tisk, tisk.
Boo. All right. 3, 2, 5 minutes in 3, 2, 1.
So the question at the heart of this debate is AI a genuine threat to humanity? Now, see, here's the thing. There's an overlap. The AI that is lasering weeds off of crops so you don't have to use like pesticides, that's a boon to humanity. That AI right there is helping humans avoid cancer, reproductive harm, mental bullshit, fucking heart disease. Good. But that is only one way that lasers being able to be aimed at things is applicable. And in a world with target-rich environments and AI facial recognition using the same exact sort of little box around the thing that it thinks is the thing that it needs to throw a laser at, the AI could be equally used in that way. And because of that and the people funding it, the AI that I'm talking about that is a threat to humanity is the thing that I am primarily concerned with. The thing that I'm primarily concerned with is the ability for the AI and the willingness for those who aim the AI to do the things that I would consider a threat to humanity. And the general vibe that I want to confer is that AI as a concept is a threat to humanity because humans are not ready to stop being a threat to themselves, and because humans are the ones creating this artificial intelligence, and because the artificial intelligence is being created in their image. Humanity is building their own destruction. Humanity is having fun with their apocalypse. Humanity is helping the state and its corporate assets strip the individuality from people and gradually subsume it to a machine of data sets and learning algorithms and, all of these things that gradually contribute to our slow demise of freedom and peace and prosperity. The job market is already fucked. AI makes that worse. The creativity market is already a problem because, like, people aren't being supported in this economic downturn. The general vibe of the country is that it's being more and more expensive to hire people, and it's becoming less and less incentivized to do so because the economy is fucked. And unlike Mises, people think in terms of economics and not catalactics. Like, when we end up with this mentality of AI, what we have is, please help me strip the human element from life so that we can continue to further this particular type of agenda. Whether that agenda is what wins out in the end is going to depend on whether or not humans can resist that urge. But the overwhelming amount of AI use is designed for that. I don't need to hire an artist. I could just get AI to do it. I don't need to hire a writer. I could just get AI to do it. I don't even need to hire a specific person. I can get AI to make it seem like a voice actor said something so that I can include it in my dumb fuck YouTube video. Like, all of these things combine to create an environment of evil. And, as a Sonic fan, as everybody here can tell, I am obligated to oppose AI, not only because you're fighting the robots in that franchise and fighting for that individuality that they try to take from you in order to subsume you into the tyranny, but also because the voice actors from that were right when they said that AI is a threat to their line of work and their very existence at this point. The artists behind it saying that AI is a threat, and if you see somebody using it, you should ostracize them. That's how we deal with this problem. It is a threat. It is stealing humanity from humans, and it is tracking us, controlling us, censoring us, and doing it all at the behest of the state. AI is absolutely a threat to humanity, and anybody who doesn't see that threat is blind. And I think Brian does. I think Brian does see that threat. And I think ultimately he agrees with me that it is a threat to humanity in its current application. I just think that he was trying to take a more neutral stance. And so for the sake of debate, he had some issues with some of the things I was saying. But ultimately, I think we're on the same page. And I think that's good, because if we are to prevent Skynet from ever taking place, we need all hands on motherfucking deck to smash the fucking state.
Well said. All right. Well, that concludes our debate. To anyone listening to this, reach out to me or any of the guests, and I would like to know if anyone has had their mind changed by this debate, or were you convinced by either of the arguments here? I want to thank you both for coming on, and I want to say I really appreciate that this remains civil and respectful, and we can show that we can disagree on things and still not be dicks to each other, and that's always good. And I do actually think that you guys probably would agree on a lot more than you actually disagree on, maybe not about this particular topic. But do both of you feel that you got all that you wanted to say about this topic out?
No. If people want to find out more, then they can find out more on my channel, Jeremiah Talks, and other places that I am. But I have shit ton more to say on this topic, and I'm bipolar, so I can go on for literally. If we kept it running, I could go on for 9 more hours. But that's not okay. That's not feasible. So
I said to Brian before we started, I'm like, this is like a 27-hour topic. You know what I mean? This is not going to be finished in like a couple hours. But Brian, what about you? Do you feel you got everything out that you wanted to say about this topic?
Yeah, I agree. I think Jeremiah and I are both on the side of individual freedom and maximizing that. And that's what I am all about. I'm just very pinpointed on, okay, what's really the threat? And, in ways, again, like I was talking about, AI is such a umbrella term. It's such a large thing. There are things to worry about. There are others that maybe not so much. And so, yeah, I feel like I got everything out. As long as people walk away from this with a nuanced position on, wait a minute, when they say AI, what are they talking about? Then I'm happy. That as long as people are, again, more informed and again, come at it with that nuanced position, I'm there. And you can find more. You want me talking about this more? Just head over to nwo.red. I know that people are going to love that. Just go to nwo.red and you can check it out.
Would either of you be interested in a metaphysical discussion around AI? So, like, what I mean by that is, could this what is the mind? What can this thing achieve? Anything approximating a human mind? Like, could this become sapient at all? Is that even possible, or is it? Or do we just not understand consciousness? Would either of you be interested in a discussion around that? Or maybe
I think you hit it at the end. I think you already hit the answer at the end there, but I am totally down for that.
Okay.
Yeah, like
cool.
we could just have a conversation about that and things in general on another episode with Ryan,
Sure.
if that was what you were into.
Sure. Yeah, we'll talk about it. But again, thanks to both of you for coming on. You guys both did fucking awesome. So I was really pleased with how this went, and I hope everybody
Thanks so much, everyone.
finds some value in this. And everybody be excellent to each other. And Penguin, do you have anything to add before we go?
It was rad. It was fun. It was fun to listen to for sure. Definitely got me thinking, especially what Jeremiah said at the end. I think that's a good point. Trying to take the human element out. I guess from what I see, the applications that have come out recently, just taking the human element out of things and creating things that a human wouldn't necessarily. I don't know. You get the picture of what he was saying. That he is taking the human element out of things and just creating stuff. Because a lot of people are using it obviously to troll, and that's kind of proves a certain point. But anyways, it was a great discussion. Really got me thinking, and definitely like the our foray into the debate format.
Yeah, it was dope. I thought this was great. So again, Brian had to bounce, but Jeremiah, thanks for coming on, dude. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and we'll see all of you next time. Be excellent to each other.
Woo! Just coming off of doing a very formal debate that I mean, I knew it was going to happen like a month ahead of time. And actually, if you're in the Patreon Discord channel for Sovryn Tech, you knew it was coming as well. It had been announced on Twitter or X by a few people, and well, anyway, it happened earlier, and boy, what a trip. First off, when this actually gets released, now this stuff that I record with the Agora podcast, because Sek was the one that reached out to me about doing this and reached out to another individual who I talked about recently, I believe, Jeremiah Harding. He'd reached out to us about doing a panel on AI, or doing a debate on it. My position, kind of being the pro position. I wouldn't call it the pro position, and when you finally get to hear it, you'll know what I mean. And Jeremiah Harding being the anti position, very proudly. Anyway, I release these. Any that I do with the Agora podcast, I let them release it first, and let them get the initial downloads and all that stuff, and then I put it out in my feed. And so that's often why, like, I can't exactly say when this stuff's going to drop, and it's fine. Like the material, I feel like I always do with them is evergreen anyway. So, there's never a rush on it, in my opinion. But this was an interesting debate, and I gotta say, Sek nailed this baby. I mean, and this is the first time, as I understand it, this is the first time he's ever actually hosted a debate, and was a moderator. I mean, he did phenomenal, and the format, all of that was just great. I mean, he really did a great job. Apparently, a few people showed up on that one, in the chat and everything. I didn't really get the chance to look at that. But was it a thing? Anyway, I'm excited for everybody to hear it. I will say, coming out of it, after doing it, just kind of my own thoughts. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I'm not in the quote unquote pro AI position per se. Okay. What I am in the position of is fucking understanding what you're talking about and being paranoid about things that are actually worth your time being paranoid over. Okay. And what the world, journalists, companies, tech giants, whatever, are schlepping to you right now, that's called AI, are none of the above. I mean, it's nothing to be paranoid about. It's nothing to actually be worried about. I mean, if anything, at the very end of the day, we still live in a system right now, even in the legacy system, we still live in a system that has, that has wall outlets where you can unplug shit. And, and not only that, but, like the things are still in place to where you don't truly need to, use something that say AI would harbor itself within or whatever. I mean, yes, if you need to get on a plane, that things like that could end up becoming unavoidable. But there are alternatives for all this stuff. Anyway, I don't need to get into all that. Okay. But my primary focus, first off, let me say this. Okay. First off, I was kind of expecting it to be a more like Skynet is coming kind of conversation from Jeremiah's side. And it didn't end up being that. And I mean, it kind of did, I guess. And that's fine. But that admittedly, that's, like I said, I had a month, he and I had like a month to prepare for this. And that was what a lot of my preparation was kind of for. Was, okay, no, like there is no evidence, that there is, a super intelligent AI or even an AGI. All of the tests we have for these things are incredibly flawed tests, from the Turing test to take your pick of it. Okay. But, I mean, so there's that aspect of it. And I mean, maybe it's just as well that it didn't go that way, because honestly, that's an easy position to lose. To try and prove that AI exists right now, or that a super intelligence or an AGI exists right now, like that's a losing proposition. Like you can't, you can guess, you can engage in some supposition, but you can't prove it. But I mean, kind of the main point really that I wanted to get out there was, well, it's kind of a double-sided point. The main point I wanted to get out there, which I feel like I more or less got out there, is that the resources to even do the nightmare scenarios that people have around this boogeyman AI, okay, don't exist. They don't exist in our solar system. You understand? Okay. And if you say, well, we can go beyond the solar system, well, we're actually going to talk about that in this episode, in this Q&A, when we get to a couple of fun questions. Okay. But you've got a lot of legwork to do to prove that we're somehow someday going to get out of this solar system. Good fucking luck. Unless you're talking about from a more, perhaps a supernatural or spiritual ability to do so. Not to say that those haven't been theorized by, shall we say, legitimate, hardened astrophysicists, but regardless, okay, I mean, there's that point. Okay, so the resources just don't exist to do what people are afraid is going to happen. Okay, as in the resources to build the computational framework, network, and power, to do that. Like, it's not here. It's not on Earth. Like I said, I don't think it's even in the solar system. Okay. So that point, and then the other point that I wanted to drive home, that I saw Jeremiah shake his head a lot at, and I'm sure that a lot of people who perhaps are less educated, okay, in the nature of computer science, and that's okay. It's not some badge of honor to be really knowledgeable about computer science, all right? You don't have to read Donald Knuth's work. I mean, I have, but you don't have to read that, all right, to be a valued person or to, you know what I mean? But my point is that I wanted to get out there. And maybe this is the one thing I didn't get out hard enough, but I think I got it out there, was that the individual, as in you and I, and the government use the same exact computers. Okay? That's it. I mean, I've talked about this on Sovereign Tech so many times over. The military, they use Windows. Hell, they don't even pay for the license on it anymore, or they stopped. I mean, we've talked about the laughing stories where there have been pictures in like military training videos, and you can see on the screens in the video where there's the watermark that it wasn't a licensed copy of Windows. Fucking hilarious. But nobody's out there. I mean, yes, are there supercomputers? Sure there are. I have a supercomputer literally downstairs from the studio. It's called a PlayStation 3. It has an IBM Cell processor. That is a genuine supercomputer. Yeah, there's supercomputers out there, but I have them too. A lot of people have them. Colleges have them. They're all over the fucking place. There are no proprietary supercomputers, shall we say, that somehow the government is the only one that owns these fuckers. Cray computers were never exclusively owned by the government. And you say, oh, what about quantum computers? Quantum computers at their present state, and this is just like the conversation around AI, are quantum computers ever going to actually be a thing? I don't think so. And time and evidence at this stage is on my side that it's not going to happen, regardless of what developments have already occurred in 2024, and there have been a couple. Okay. But quantum computers, do they exist? Yes, on a computational sense, as in the way that they do computations, they do exist. However, they're so not powerful, and computer scientists don't know how to make them more powerful, that their computational abilities are not comparable, as in they are significantly inferior to some of the best traditional computers that you have today. So they are not a threat, you understand. Okay? This is my point. You have the same fucking software and computer ability and all that. Okay, yeah, you might not be running, SIPRnet and RipperNet or whatever and have your own networks and stuff like this. But even that, you can do all of that. All the secret information's fucking going around to the government. Yeah, they're going to get us. Yeah, evil. Ooh, yeah. They're using Ethernet cable, which you can go down to Ace Hardware and buy yourself. All this fucking shit is at your fingertips. This is the part that blows my mind. They don't, other than guns, and big guns and predator drones and things like that, other than that shit, okay? And I'm not saying those aren't things to be worried about, but then let's talk about those. Not this other horse shit. Okay? Yep, they have legal killing machines. Okay. But that's not what we're talking about. Right? Talking about facial recognition. We're talking about, all these other kinds of things. These are all things that are not illegal for any individual to own. Might be some gray area in how they can use it, but even that's not exactly true, right? There are private companies that have the largest facial facial recognition databases. Let's say that they're not government owned at all, and the government doesn't want them to be government owned because then they can purchase from them, and it becomes another legal gray area. Okay. Yeah, okay. It would take some money on your part. It would take this and that, and time, and you have to get an education on the matter and all this stuff. Sure, I understand. All right. But that doesn't change the fact that you are literally using the same quote unquote advanced technology that they are every single day, and you can take control of it your goddamned self. Do I like how the government's implementing this stuff? Fuck no. And on that, Jeremiah and I have no disagreement. We have no disagreement on that. Okay. But at the same time, to say that somehow it's an inherently evil technology. I mean, look, yes, things are, technology is not just a tool anymore. Like I I'll stand by that. Okay. But you do have access to the same tools. And you can use them as well. And perhaps, this is like the whole concept of Cory Doctorow's Little Brother, right? His book, Little Brother, where, because he understood this too. And when did Little Brother come out? 10 years ago? He understood, Cory Doctorow got this as well. That, hey, we have the same tech that they're using. Let's use it on them. So that's why I kind of bristle at this, like, oh, AI's coming to get us. No, you could just use it against them if you want, and you can. But ChatGPT is doing it. Run your own LLM, motherfucker. ChatGPT can write malware, and it can do whatever. I don't know. It can take advantage of exploits of varying CVEs and everything, at such a high level or whatever. Okay, you can run your own LLM, and then you can go crack into all those systems, just like ChatGPT can, supposedly. That's not exactly how it worked, but my point being, you 1,000% have the same goddamn technology at your fingertips, and it's not expensive, that the government does, that they're using on you. So I don't know if I drove that point hard enough. Their computers, their networks, all that stuff runs the same way that everything that's in your house runs. There is literally no difference. For fuck's sake, they're even using Windows. If you're using Linux, you've got a leg up on governments. You understand? Mind blowing. Do I want to exist in this world, where everything's so interconnected? No, fuck no. Not at all. But to respond, if this is something you are afraid of, to respond to it with, and I didn't really, I have to say, I didn't really hear like a resolution on their side. I mean, I said what I would do with whatever varying AI technologies that exist right now. I said, let them run roughshod. Develop the fuck out of them. Let them go nuts. So I don't have to come up with a solution to this. I mean, my purpose in saying let the shit run roughshod is because the more powerful it is, and you have access to it as well, and you do. Also, all it takes, and it's already happened multiple times, so I have evidence for this happening, all it fucking takes is one engineer at one tech giant to leak an LLM. Kind of like what happened with Llama, right? With Meta's Llama. That's state-of-the-art shit. And they just put it up on torrent sites. But that's all it takes. It's one person to leak that shit, and then everybody's got it. And you can use it against them. Now, if we're talking about more than LLMs, talking about computer vision and all this other stuff, again, you can use all of it. This concern that somehow, the government's going to, it's going to be a Running Man situation, and the government's going to, create like wag the dog situations where it's, fake news and whatever else. And they're going to make everybody believe that this is what happened in a certain situation. And so that they'll accept more Patriot Act style legislation or something like that. Look, that sword swings both ways. You can get shit out there quick enough and viral enough to fuck with people's heads. Look at what happened. Remember when there was the report? It wasn't true, but there was the report. This would have been back, I guess it had to be 2012. When there it was the morning, and there was a report that President Obama's plane had crashed and the stock market tanked. I mean, in pretty quick order, they said, no, it's not true. President Obama's fine. But it didn't matter. The effects were real anyway. And so, you can use the fake news against the government itself. Oh, but I got to learn. Aha! Now we get at it. In Dune, there's that really great line from Frank Herbert, right? Fear is the mind killer. it's true. I think expansion can be had upon that, though. Not that Frank Herbert would have said this necessarily, but I think expansion can be had on that. And that is, fear is the respite of the lazy. You can put that on a t-shirt you want, if you want. That's from me, baby. That's Doc Sovryn right there. Fear is the respite of the lazy. Because, fear ultimately, as Captain Kirk said, while we're running quotes, as Captain Kirk said, fear often comes from the unknown, right? Not always. And there are fears that are legitimate, and some of them are even biological, right? Like our, kind of fear that I guess some of us do get over, but fear of snakes and spiders and things like this, we know we've evolved those. Okay, so that's different than what we're talking about. Fear is one of those words that's a problem just like love, right? What the fuck do you mean by love? Well, what do you mean by fear? What kind of fear are we talking about? Anyway, fear, as in concerns over somebody doing something to you, often comes from the unknown. Now, to make the unknown known, there is a crucial step to that. Either someone can tell you, and that's somebody that you trust, or, and this is the crucial step, you have to get off your ass. And you have to learn something. Okay? Not, again, like I said earlier, I'm not saying everybody has to become computer scientists. By no means. I don't even want that. I'm way more in line with Herbert, Frank Herbert saying, thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of man. Like I'm almost to the point of thou shalt not make a machine. Like fucking A, man, I'm done. I'm not saying this at all. I am just saying that let's concentrate on fears / concerns that have grounding, that warrant it. All right. Because again, all of these things that you're talking about, usually these are swords, like a lot of AI, these are swords that can swing both ways. You can use them too. But again, it's just a lot easier to be afraid of them, right? Than it is to actually learn about them. Or perhaps learn how to use them yourself. And it seems to be a bit of human nature to be lazy. And you might hear me complain a lot about laziness. I think I even brought it up when we were just doing the debate. I am not saying laziness is a bad thing. Actually, I think leisure, and maybe it's a problem of terminology as well, because I think engaging in leisure is, if I were to use this term, is a birthright of humanity. Okay. There should be more leisure time than there is not. So I don't really have a problem with laziness. Okay. I have a problem with, how to put this? I have a problem with someone's inaction or laziness or unwillingness causing others or interfering with the lives of other people. Meaning, well, I'm afraid of this, so I want to make everybody else afraid of this. And there's no justification for you to be afraid of whatever that thing happens to be. All right, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with, people siphoning off resources off of others when they can make their own. They just decide not to. That's the kind of laziness I have an issue with. Okay. The kind of laziness of, yeah, hot damn, like, no, I'm done working on projects tonight. I just want to lay down and play video games and have some nachos and whatever. Like, no, I'm all for that. I mean, thumbs fucking up, right? Like I am with you on that kind of laziness, baby. Because there's a laziness that you earn, and then there's a laziness that you don't earn. How about that? Because I'm not going to say that somehow working hard is some kind of virtue. I'm not going to say anything along those lines. I don't necessarily believe in virtues, right? That was another thing that happened in that debate. A lot of, we're going to get into questions, folks, don't worry. But in that debate, I heard the term evil get tossed around a lot. And I like every time it came out, I wanted to say, wait, what's evil? But that wasn't the purview of the conversation. Like, what does evil mean? I don't understand. I mean, I do understand. I know what they're saying, but at the same time, like you're applying a maliciousness, which is part of the whole problem that I'm talking about. You're applying a maliciousness in action that you have to prove exists in the first place, right? And not only, and like, or is it just stupidity, or is it, whatever? Like, I'm just not one to toss around the word evil. There's selfishness. That's a problem. And again, selfishness and self-interestedness self-interested, those are two different things. One's good, or one's good, one's bad, one's evil. No, one is, shall we say, the purview of the individual. The other becomes the purview of the group. But as in, it requires another to be harmed, as to where self-interestedness, is you just bettering yourself. So, or acting within your own interests, and not at the exclusion of others. Anyway, okay. So, yeah, you got to tell me, like, talk to me about what this fucking evil is, man, because I don't see a universe of good and evil. Anyway, okay. We got to stop talking about that. We got to get into some questions. And I've got a couple. We're actually going to, and I can't wait for you guys to hear the debate, and, let me know your thoughts. Just the last thing I'm going to say on it really is it wasn't a debate where I feel like there was a winner and a loser. Okay. I feel like very much it was a debate where there are, in some ways also is kind of two sides of the same coin, but, in fact, somebody I think might have said something to the effect of, you're both right, and kind of walking away from it. Yeah, I sort of get that, but anyway, it was a good debate where a lot of information got laid down, a lot of stuff got talked about, and it was a pleasure to be a part of it. That's the bottom line. Okay, because Stone Cold said so.